Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The April 18th, 2022 legislative meeting of the Anne Arundel County Council is now in session. Please silence all electronic devices at this time. Please pause for the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Hare will lead tonight.
Let us be thankful for this day that has been given to us, for its blessings, its opportunities, its challenges. May we appreciate and use each day that comes to us to the best of our abilities. We pray for strength and guidance for each day as it comes, for each day's duties, for each day's problems. May we be challenged to give our best always, and may we be assured of your guidance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Secretary, please read the ethics statement.
The Ethics Commission has asked that I advise you that under certain circumstances, members of the public may qualify as lobbyists when they testify before the County Council. If so, the law requires that certain information be filed with the Ethics Commission. The chairman of the Ethics Commission has asked that those who wish to testify in any form review the general information on lobbying sheet located on the ethics website under forms and publications. If there are any questions about lobbying requirements, please contact the Ethics Commission at 410-222-4413.
Thank you. At this time, we have a presentation that Ms. Pickard will be leading.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm extremely pleased tonight to present two citations in recognition of the graduation rate of Anne Arundel County Public Schools, surpassing 90% for the first time with the class of 2021. This achievement is the third straight year of increases in the four-year cohort graduation rate for AACPS students and includes rate increases in every student category. In addition to the superintendent, I have invited Principal McGuire in recognition of Glen Burnie High School's particular achievement. I would like to ask Superintendent Dr. Arlotto, District 2 Board Member Robert Silkworth, Glen Burnie High School Principal Scott McGuire, and Assistant Principal Ashley Housen to come forward to receive citations. This citation is presented to Anne Arundel County Public Schools in recognition of Anne Arundel County Public Schools for extraordinary high graduation rate and its steadfast commitment to excellence in education. The Anne Arundel County Council commends the teachers, staff, students, and families of Anne Arundel County Public Schools for this achievement and wishes you continued success. And I'd like to present this citation to Principal McGuire and Assistant Principal Housen for representing Glen Burnie High School in recognition of Glen Burnie High School's achievement of graduation rate in excess of 91% following a 16 percentage point increase over the past 11 years. The Anne Arundel County Council congratulates the students, teachers, staff, and families of Glen Burnie High School for this extraordinary accomplishment and their commitment to excellence in education. Thank you.
Congratulations. All right, at this time, we will have the FY21 audit presentation, which will be led by Michelle Bolaire, our county auditor, Karen McQuaid, our county controller, and William Seymour from SB and Company. You may have the floor as soon as you're ready.
Okay. Good evening. My name is William Seymour. I'm the engagement partner with SB and Company. This represents our communications with those charged with governance, yourself, at the conclusion of a financial statement audit. I'm going to walk through my presentation here. Please stop me with any questions that you may have. Go to the next slide, please. So the scope of services, we were engaged to perform and did perform an audit of the June 30, 2021 financial statements, the performance of the Uniform Guidance Single Audit, an audit of the June 30, 2021 OPEB financial statements or other post-employment benefit health trust financial statements, the review of the Uniform Financial Report, preparation of the data collection form, review of the financial statements prepared by management, as well as working with management on a year-round basis. Next slide, please. Summary of the results, we've issued an unmodified, or if you will, clean opinion on the financial statements. That is the best opinion that we are allowed to issue under generally accepted auditing standards. We did not discover, nor were we made aware of any instances of fraud. We noted no material weaknesses in internal controls, and we received the full cooperation from management in getting through the audit. And lastly, we noted no journal entries as part of our audit. Effectively, the very easy way of saying that the financial statement, the process that management uses to create the financial statements, we believe is reliable, and the information, had it not been audited, would otherwise been correct. This slide just is a pictorial of our audit approach. It's a risk-based audit approach. Effectively, the idea is we go through a process to assess and source risks, then go through a process to test the design and operation of management's controls to mitigate that risk. Then we go through various other audit procedures, substantive procedures, analytics, audit standard required items. The entire process is designed to allow us to get enough evidence to be able to issue that unmodified opinion. Next slide, please. Included in our risk approach and looking at that, we also looked at the risks of the effect of COVID-19, of the pandemic, and working through we've included a list of some of the examples that would be out there. We included this as part of our risk assessment, and we had no issues as a result of any of these areas. Next slide, please. As part of our audit, we also assess, we follow the COSO model of internal controls. That is the 5 interrelated components of the control environment, risk assessment, control activities, monitoring, and then information and communication. And you can see here in all cases our assessment was that it was effective. Had we had issues, that we had lots of journal entries, had we had problems getting through the audit, we would be looking at these to say suggested improvements, material weakness, or significant deficiencies. We have none of those items to disclose to you. On the next slide, we dive down to a summary of the evaluation of key processes and the underlying functions. And this is where we go through a process of both of internal controls as well as substantive procedures. And on the next couple of slides, you can see in all cases our assessment was effective. Once again, if we had issues, we would have be talking about a significant deficiency or material weakness. Next slide, please. We are in the process of completing the single audit. As a result of the CARES funding as well as ARPA funding that has come through, as well as kind of the rush to fund those items, the federal government kind of backdated a lot of the requirements, and management is working to make sure that they're always ahead of where those items are. We're in the process of doing the single audit. We're testing 3 programs, the coronavirus relief funding, the emergency rental assistance program, and the Access Harm opioid reduction grant. Your total federal awards were just under $93 million. We are testing about 68% or about $63 million of that. You would be otherwise required to have testing of about 20%, so we're significantly ahead of where that is. Through our testing to date, we've noted no significant issues or material weaknesses, and if we do come across something that is significant, we doubt that it will occur, we will bring that to your attention. The remaining slides, and I won't go through these each individually, are our specific required communications. This is our opportunity and requirement to speak to you kind of about, if you will, what's underneath the hood of the audit. Have we had, items that management had selected a ultra-aggressive or ultra-conservative accounting policy? Had there been areas that lacked authoritative guidance? Have we had, disagreements with management? Or, if you will, what I would term any negative items as part of an audit. We have none of those items to report to you. I want to thank Karen and her team for getting us all the information, working with us, the patients on a first-time through audit and transition, and getting the audit done timely. And I'll take any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Are there any questions from my colleagues? Go ahead, Mr. Pruski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's not a question, it's a comment. Seems like Anne Arundel County is doing pretty good in terms of their financial records, and you stated it clearly, and thank you for the work that you're done. And I think for transparency purposes, because I always got this question, are you independent? Of course you are. We're hired, by, and it's not like somebody hired you because you know somebody. I just want to make that clear for the record, that this is an independent audit that we are required to do as a government entity, and I think it came out with an A+, and I think you'd probably agree with me. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Oh, yes, Ms. Lacey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to add that A+, I think, is also a specific grade to Madam Auditor Michelle Bolaire, who served us for 1 year as of April 1st, and so great job. Thank you.
All right, any additional comments or questions from my colleagues? Well, with that, this panel is dismissed. And just to clarify for the folks in the audience, we all received the audit report a few days ahead of time, so we've had a chance to look over it. So thank you very much for your hard work, and thank you very much to Ms. Bolaire. This panel is dismissed. At this time, we will now open our invitation to audience. Madam Secretary, do we have any comments or communications on any subject not included in the printed agenda received from the members of the public?
Yes, Madam Chair. One submission was received through the online testimony tool ahead of time. That's gone to the entire council. It's included in the summary that's posted online as well.
Thank you very much. We will now invite members of the audience who signed up before the meeting to address the council briefly on any subject not included in the printed agenda. Remarks will be limited to 2 minutes. And I do have one name. You may come on down. I'm assuming you're Richard Willis. Come on down. You may have a seat. State your name and address for the record, and you have 2 minutes. You may proceed when you're ready.
All right, thank you. Good evening. My name is Richard Willis, and I live on Cove Road in Edgewater, Maryland. I come today not only representing myself, but also representing a vast majority of the residents of Harbor View and West Shore, two quaint waterfront communities in the 7th District on a body of water known as Pool's Gut. Some of my fellow neighbors have come with me in support. Mrs. Hare, we are your constituents. In about 2019, before I even lived in the area, Charles Dabbs had a derelict houseboat towed to the end of the gut. The boat has no running water or plumbing, no electricity, no engine, and is an eyesore that is undoubtedly diminishing the value of any home within view. Additionally, there is no public access to the houseboat. Therefore, Mr. Dabbs trespasses on various properties in order to access his boat. I posted no trespassing signs and had the police order Mr. Dabbs to stop trespassing on my property. Still, my camera captured him trespassing my property over 50 times in a matter of weeks, causing him to be charged with 14 counts of criminal trespass. Even after he was served with the charging documents, he continued to trespass on my property. It was also found that Mr. Dabbs cut a path through my property without my permission after another neighbor complained about him on her property. He also ran extension cords through my property and onto his boat, causing a potential hazard for my 4-year-old son playing in the yard, or an electrocution hazard for anyone attempting to enjoy the water. For that reason, the cords have been disconnected, and now Mr. Dabbs runs a generator day and night, causing a noise nuisance. My wife and I put our son to sleep at 8:30 and have to listen to the generator for an hour and a half until the noise ordinance goes into effect. The community's other major concern is how Mr. Dabbs is disposing of his waste. Because the boat has no working engine, The boat has not moved in 3 years. Therefore, there is no way it has been taken to a pump-out station, nor has anyone ever seen a boat come to remove his waste. I have a camera monitoring my property and have never seen Mr. Dabbs removing waste, which leads us to believe that he is simply disposing it into the water.
Mr. Willis, your 2 minutes have expired. You may conclude your remarks.
All right. We have laws that regulate this for a reason, and if this is the case, this is cause for major concern. I want to close by thanking you for your time. This has been an issue for a long time, and our hope is that you can assist us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If there is anyone else here who wishes to speak, you may come down to the table and state your name and address for the record. All right, seeing no movement in the audience, the invitation to audience is now closed. Is there any item any council member would like to place on the agenda? All right, seeing none, may I have a motion that the partial reading of any bill, resolution, amendment to a bill or resolution, or minutes constitutes the reading of the whole?
So moved. Allison Pickard.
Second, Councilman Persky.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Madam Secretary, please read the minutes of April 4th, 2022.
The meeting was called to order at 7 p.m. by Ms. Rodvian, who opened with the invocation and was followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. The meeting was held in the County Council Chambers, Arundel Center, Annapolis, Maryland. There were approximately 100 persons in the audience.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of April 4th, 2022?
So moved. Allison Pickard.
Is there a second?
Second, Councilman Persky.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. The minutes of April 4th, 2022 stand approved as read. Madam Secretary, please read the titles of any bills to be introduced this evening.
Bill number 3422, an ordinance concerning current expense budget, transfer of appropriation, Chief Administrative Office, Department of Public Works. Bill number 3522, an ordinance concerning Gibson Island Special Community Benefit District, approval of loan and assignment agreement. Bill number 3622, an ordinance concerning licenses and registrations, amusements, linked bingo games.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Please read the titles of any resolutions to be introduced this evening.
Resolution number 822, resolution appointing a member to the Charter Revision Commission to serve the remainder of a term. Resolution number 922, resolution recognizing Anne Arundel County Public Schools for its high graduation rate and its continued commitment to excellence in education. Resolution number 1022, resolution supporting the Caucus of African American Leaders of Anne Arundel County in condemning all acts of racism and the many forms of discrimination and intolerance that have deprived people of their human rights.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. At this time, I would like to make a motion to hear and vote on resolutions number 8-22 and 9-22 out of order right now. Is there a second?
Second, Councilman Persky.
Do we need a roll call vote? Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Mr. Pruski.
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler.
Aye.
Ms. Hare.
Aye.
Ms. Lacey.
Aye.
Ms. Pickard.
Aye.
Mr. Volke.
Aye.
Ms. Rodvian.
Aye.
7 in the affirmative, none in the negative. The motion to hear resolution numbers 822 and 922 out of order this evening has been adopted.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. So I am the sponsor of resolution number 8-22. Madam Secretary, please read the title of resolution number 8-22.
Resolution number 822, resolution appointing a member to the Charter Revision Commission to serve the remainder of a term.
Thank you. So again, as the sponsor, my wonderful appointee to the Charter Revision Commission had to step down because his residence changed and unfortunately for us, no longer lives in Anne Arundel County. However, we have a wonderful appointee that I would like to have step into this post, Mr. Patrick Enright. He has attended all of the meetings and is a regular attendee at our council sessions and our work sessions and follows local government very closely. So I thought he would be a perfect fit for to step into the role for the Charter Revision Commission. So would anyone else like to make a comment? Go ahead, Mr. Pruski.
As the senior member on the council, it's hard for me to say that. I've worked with Mr. Enright for a long time, and I will tell you, he not only holds Democrat, Republicans, Independents. He really provides good advice because he pays attention to a lot of our meetings and really wants to do what's best for citizens, and that's what we need to serve on this commission. So I fully support the nominee and going to vote, and I appreciate the work that he does. I'm looking forward to hearing what he has to say about the charter review. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional comments or questions from my colleagues? All right. Hearing none, Madam Secretary, please call the roll on resolution number 8-22.
Mr. Pruski.
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler.
Aye.
Ms. Hare.
Aye.
Ms. Lacy.
Aye.
Ms. Pickard.
Aye.
Mr. Volkey.
Aye.
Ms. Rodvian.
Aye.
7 in the affirmative, none in the negative. Resolution number 822 is adopted.
And if it's all right, I would like to congratulate Mr. Enright. Thank you very much for your willingness to step up, and we can give him a little round of applause. All right, moving on. Madam Secretary, please read the title of resolution number 9-22.
Resolution number 922, resolution recognizing Anne Arundel County Public Schools for its high graduation rate and its continued commitment to excellence in education.
Ms. Pickard and Mr. Pruski, this is your resolution. You may have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It is a privilege and an honor to be able to make this resolution tonight, congratulating our school system on this really awesome achievement. And I'm grateful that we were able to move this forward as we have representatives here who would probably appreciate seeing this vote tonight. I don't need to read the full resolution. This information came out the week before spring break, and there was some publicity on the news. I happened to be at Glen Burnie High School when this news broke. It's very, very exciting. But the school system has truly achieved, even through some challenging years that we've had with COVID, some really great accomplishments. And I think it's important for this body, one of its main funding sources, to acknowledge that hard work of the administration, of the staff and teachers, and our students and families who are striving every day to achieve excellence in education. So I hope I will have a 7-0 vote on this evening, and I thank you.
And Mr. Pruski, would you like to add any
Yes,
thoughts?
thank you, Madam Chair. I did serve on the Board of Education, but more importantly, I'm a parent in the school system, and we want to see success, regardless of who or where. And I have to say, from the teacher's aide and the teachers in the classroom to the principals, assistant principals, and even our superintendent, Dr. Arlotto, and the board, thank you. We've been through a rough pandemic. I know a lot of you have gotten heat, probably some more than us with some of the things, and this is an acknowledgement of the work that still went on and the work that continues, and I appreciate it. Like I said, as a parent, but as a taxpayer, seeing some of the successes, and we hope that continues, and thank you so much, and this is just, again, a simple acknowledgement, but we appreciate it. Thank you.
Any additional questions or comments from my colleagues? I will add my congratulations to Dr. Arlotto and everyone in AACPS. I know it's very hard, and we've been through some extremely challenging times that I know I say this, I have a reason every meeting to mention that I'm a public school teacher, so I've experienced them firsthand. But we have gotten, well, I don't want to say to the end of it, but we've made it through some very hard times. And so congratulations on this achievement, especially with all of those things that we've had to face over the past few years. And with that,
Madam Chair.
oh, yes, go ahead, Mr. Volkey.
Thank you. I also just want to echo the sentiments of my colleagues, but also say to Dr. Arlotto, thank you for your leadership here in the county. This is a heck of a capstone for you, I would say, to an excellent career here in Anne Arundel County. So thank you for what you've done for your leadership, and I think this is quite an accomplishment to be going out on a very, very high note, so thank you.
All right, Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Mr. Pruski.
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler.
Aye.
Ms. Hare.
Aye.
Ms. Lacy.
Aye.
Ms. Pickard.
Aye.
Mr. Volkey.
Aye.
Ms. Rodvian.
Aye.
7 in the affirmative, none in the negative. Resolution number 922 is adopted.
Thank you very much, Madam Secretary. At this time, please read the title of Bill number 16-22 as amended.
Bill number 1622, an ordinance concerning Police Accountability Board.
All right, once again, this is an administration bill. Mr. Barron, and I know you have a team joining you at the table, but you may make any remarks you would like as soon as you're ready.
Thank you. That a little closer. Thank you, Madam Chair. Joining me at the table is our chief, Chief Atwood, from Office of Law, Lori Blair-Klausmeyer, and Ethan Hunt. We have some other folks in the audience if questions come up. Yes, as you mentioned, this bill has been discussed several times. Just as a reminder, last year the General Assembly passed HB 670, which requires that the counties establish police accountability boards. The state laid out procedures and responsibilities for the board, tasked counties with establishing the board's membership structure, budget, staffing, and record keeping. The administration worked hard to bring forward Bill 1622 to meet these state mandated requirements. Over the past, I believe it's 3 meetings, we've had a number of amendments from council members. We believe they have made this bill stronger and better. The administration did sponsor 1 or 2 of those amendments. Come July 1st, the law enforcement, oh, great, we have Rhonda McCoy joining us from the city. Come July 1st, under 670, the Law Enforcement Officers Bill of Rights is repealed, and there will be no disciplinary framework to take its place unless we pass this bill. To be clear here, 1622 is not the end of the discussion of police accountability. The next step after this bill, there's a bill following it, 2422, which creates the executive director position. And then in the coming weeks and months, we will need to seat the board, and the board will need to begin its work. The police accountability will be, for the first time, have, in matters of alleged police misconduct, a public involved process for police discipline. As you all know by now, the Police Accountability Board appoints the majority of the members of the Administrative Charging Committee by state law. The Administrative Charging Committee is where the adjudicatory process happens. And if you have further questions on this, if you go back to the first meeting, there was a whole PowerPoint on that. The PAB will need to meet at least quarterly with the heads of all the law enforcement agencies in the county. They will review and make recommendations on policy, on data, on things like the training of officers, officer morale, the technology our officers have, the compensation that they're provided. And it'll identify issues of systemic bias and other areas that need improvement when we are not living up to the high standards that the chief expects of our department. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the chief for a couple of quick comments, and happy to take any questions.
Good evening,
I don't think it's going to move.
Madam Chair, Council. On behalf of the men and women of the Anne Arundel County Police Department, I thank you and your respective staff for the time and work you've invested with this police accountability bill. Again, I do wish to recognize Mr. Barron, Ms. Blair, Mr. Hunt, Ms. McCoy for the work they and their respective staff have completed on behalf of Mr. Pittman. And as some of you may recall, in our conversations prior to my appointment as Chief of Police, I supported a Citizens Review Board because I believe these boards provide our residents with an opportunity not only to learn about who we are and what we do as an agency, but how we conduct investigations and determine the appropriate level of any disciplinary action with regard to administrative matters. As a reminder, your Anne Arundel County Police Department is accredited by the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies, known as CALEA. CALEA requires agencies to meet hundreds of standards subjected to audit each year. For nearly 30 years, the Anne Arundel County Police Department has been accredited by the CALEA, by the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies. we're one of only 32 of the hundreds of Maryland police departments to have earned this esteemed accreditation. And of the more than 18,000 police departments in the United States, we are one of only 945 accredited police departments in the entire country. This gold standard in public safety serves as a source of pride for this agency and Anne Arundel County. Again, last year when CALEA concluded their audit of our department, they closed our exit interview with very succinct remarks: we need more Anne Arundels. That message should resonate countywide and, quite frankly, across this nation. At a time when felonious crimes have increased exponentially throughout most of our neighboring jurisdictions and the United States, felonious crimes have decreased in Anne Arundel County. There is a quality of life that our residents have come to enjoy and expect as a result of the daily commitment and passion our officers deliver every day, from community engagement to coaching, mentoring, saving lives to fighting crime, all in the interest of fostering relationships and safeguarding this community. We believe in being transparent and holding ourselves accountable, and we thank you for your commitment toward ensuring a fair, impartial, equitable process is established for our police officers through the future passing of a good, sound police accountability bill for Anne Arundel County, the best place for all. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, are there any questions or comments from my council colleagues? All right, seeing none, we will now open the public hearing on Bill number 16-22 as amended. Madam Secretary, do we have any testimony received from members of the public?
Yes, Madam Chair, we did receive 3 submissions through the online testimony tool ahead of time that went to the entire council. It's also included in the summary that's posted online.
Thank you very much. We will now invite members of the audience who signed up before the meeting to address the council on Bill number 16-22 as amended. Remarks will be limited to 2 minutes. We do have one person signed up in advance. Jennifer Sell, if you are in the audience, you may come down. State your name and address for the record, and when you are ready, you have 2 minutes.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Sell. I live at 444 Linwood Drive, Severna Park, Maryland, 21146. I'm asking you to oppose this bill. This bill has incorporated none of the requests of the Anne Arundel County Coalition for Police Accountability. Councilwoman Hare this evening asked that her God guide her every day in doing good. This bill is not good. Your God continues to tell you this bill is not good by sending you people begging you to listen to them. We have shown up for the past 3 meetings and you continue to ignore us. Why pray to your God if you aren't listening to the message they are sending you? This council has largely been bought off by the FOP. Look at all these uniformed police in the audience tonight. I'm legitimately curious. Are they getting paid to intimidate you by sitting in the audience in their uniforms? Did they come for free while in their uniform? I find that hard to believe. If they are just concerned citizens, why are they dressed in their uniforms? They've never once gotten up and given testimonies. Why are they here if not to intimidate you? I hope your vote on this bill stays with you. I hope that at any of your future political successes, you remember that you kneeled on the necks of people of color to get those successes. I hope that every time you ask a person of color for their vote, you remember that you decided it was okay to use and abuse them to move one step closer to whatever you think success is. Because I can assure you we'll all remember it. You need to oppose this bill. I get really frustrated listening to the chief of police talk about police accreditation as if it actually means anything. From the research that I've been privy to, it largely has to do with being provided insurance so that when a police messes up and the city has to settle with the people that they conducted a crime against, the city will be able to have that funding. It doesn't necessarily mean that the police are acting accordingly. It just means that they will give the police insurance to then settle for the crimes that the police have committed against the people. So she keeps bringing that up. I just feel like she's being really dishonest and not telling the full story about why police accreditation exists in the first place.
Thank you, Ms. Sell. If there is anyone else in the audience who wishes to speak, you may come down to the table, state your name and address for the record. And again, I will go from right to left. Mr. Waddy, you may begin.
You're right. Hello. My name is Stephen Waddy. I live in Severn, Maryland, 7968 Heathermist Drive. The Coalition for the Effective Police Accountability Board was formed in January, basically, after we received this presentation from the County Executive Administration. However, we have been discussing the issue of civilian review boards since 2020 with the County Executive's Office and did not receive any formal invitation to be invited on the drafting of this documentation during the months after it was passed by the state legislature. So our coalition members, the NAACP, ACLU, United Black Clergy, the Caucus of African American Leaders, all came into that discussion late after the bill had basically been drafted. The decisions of what it looked like had already been discussed. And now we've seen weeks of amendments brought to correct, hopefully, by Councilwoman Lacey and Councilwoman Ravian, what the people who were left out thought needed to be changed. And in that meantime, there will be other opportunities, I think, for the county executive and his administration to offer their thoughts on what police reform looks like. But we did have these discussions a long time ago, and we gave them a draft bill in 2020. All of that was ignored in the post 2021 legislative session, and now we see a police accountability board that's going to be ineffective, and we have to sit and listen to propaganda, read about the polar bear plunge as people are being killed, and see pictures of the police and county executives sweeping courts when we all see them arresting us in the streets, stopping us massively. I think we had 50,000 citations issued.
Mr. Waddy, your time has
citations.
expired. If you would conclude your remarks, please.
Thank you so much.
All right. Ms.
Hi.
Davis, go ahead.
Yes, hi, Linda Davis, 215 Cornet Drive, Linthicum. This body will soon be considering a resolution to condemn racism in Anne Arundel County. I wonder if that vote will be 5-2, like most of the votes related to the recommendations of the coalition, or will that vote be 7-0? If it is 7-0, will you realize the hypocrisy in that? If you are condemning all aspects of racism, then you should be for an effective, independent police accountability board that includes all of the recommendations of the coalition. Creating this kind of board would go a long way toward condemning racism. Voting against this kind of board and passing the current bill will perpetuate the racism in this county. Modern policing has its roots in the slave patrols. The principal task of the slave patrols was to catch freedom seekers and return them to their owners. After emancipation, slave patrols turned into the county's first police forces. Since then, the police have continued to protect and serve white people and control, criminalize, terrorize, brutalize, and kill black and brown people. In her book, So You Want to Talk About Race, Ijeoma Oluo says, quote, "The experience of white communities with police are real, and the experiences of communities of color with police are real. If you trust and value your police force and you also believe in justice and equality for people of color, you will not see the lack of trust on behalf of communities of color as simply a difference of opinion. You will instead expect your police force to earn the respect and trust of communities of color by providing them with the same level of service that you enjoy. People of color are not asking white people to believe their experiences so that they will fear the police as much as people of color do. They are asking because they want white people to join them in demanding their right to be able to trust the police like white people do," unquote. I want people of color to trust the police. Passing this bill without the amendments of the coalition is not going to make people of color trust the police. It is going to do the opposite, and it will perpetuate rather than end the racism in this county. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ateto.
Thank you. Phil Ateto, Poplar Avenue, Annapolis, Maryland. So In West Virginia a few weekends ago, as part of an action there, the local organizers went over the history of the redneck and how it was a history steeped in labor organizing and workers' rights. However, as someone who grew up in Glen Burnie, the history of redneck is a beautiful one that has been thoroughly bastardized by ignorance, the same way this PAB bill has been bastardized from its original purpose and intent. Speaking with my mother recently, she lamented that I have not given you the proper credit for all the hard work you're putting in on this bill. So if you're listening, Mom, this is for you. I want to respect the hard work that all of you put in on this bill. However, sometimes you can work really hard to pass a bill, but in the end, it's still a turd. I respect that you have put in all this work, but it is still a turd. I saw it said recently, those in power want us to use proper channels to try and make change because they control those avenues and know they're ineffective. Like the process of Make It Turd, this process is a very controlled system. No matter what is put into that system, this is what came out because it was not a community-centered process. To be clear, a vote for this bill is a vote for upholding white supremacy. And for those of you up here who call yourselves allies to black and brown people, this is your opportunity to show us you care and are listening. Do you know what it might be too far outside of your range to understand, but we need you to listen to us the way you women up there would want us to listen to you if you made claims of sexual harassment, assault, or rape. I know most of you up there probably know women who are terrified to tell their story because they're afraid the man or perpetrator won't be held accountable. Those of us wronged by police feel very similar that we'll get no justice. Even white people have been telling you that this is supporting white supremacy. If you don't recognize the reality of systemic racism in this country, the police's history in it, and somehow make right for the original sins of this country, it will not exist in its current state in the future. What's obvious is you don't understand that when you center the rights of marginalized and mixed people, everyone benefits and wins. We have voting rights, marriage rights, because we centered black and brown and indigenous voices and people. I've heard it said if your Marines are still complaining, they care. When people like us stop coming, you shouldn't celebrate as it shows a further loss of faith in our government. You're making active opponents of people that used to actively support you. I know people feel betrayed as I do, many of our members of the coalition, and I know I will actively work to make sure that as you campaign, that black and brown people and other marginalized communities know that you support white supremacy and are no friend to black people and keep you from getting a single black vote.
Mr. Otetto, your 2 minutes have expired. Please
It's your
conclude
last
your
chance to do
remarks.
what's right. Get on the right side of history. Vote this bill down and start from scratch.
Thank you very much. Mr. Holt.
Arthur Holt, 8 Fisk Circle, Annapolis, Maryland. Greetings, Council. Thank you for your service. I obviously am a white male. I'm 60 years old. I have never been in a jail. I've never been arrested. I've done plenty of things that I shouldn't have done that would have gotten me arrested. I just wasn't generally living in the neighborhoods where people get arrested for doing those things. The neighborhood I live in now, out of probably, I think, 150 homes, I am not aware of one single black person living in that neighborhood, and that neighborhood is 1 mile from here. So I'd like to say there are some people that are going to be homeless tonight in the county, and the chances are that more of them, the majority of them, are going to be black and brown people. I have never had to sleep outside in the rain. However, I've seen lots of people doing that, and the majority of them have been black and brown people. They have a choice, perhaps, between sleeping outside, perhaps sleeping in a homeless shelter, or most of them end up sleeping in a jail, simply because they've done something wrong to make their situation better out of desperation. Black and brown people, the majority were brought here, the families were brought here against their will, and we need to make things equitable here in Anne Arundel County. Thank you.
And I apologize, I don't know your name, but you may have the floor. State your name and address for the record.
Thank you. My name is Victor Smith. I live in Severn, Maryland, and I'm here to talk on behalf of the Police Accountability Board bill. Basically, it's an opportunity for people to remain victims. One, I'm probably more qualified than most people in this room to be on the board. Other people are trying to circumvent the system in order to get on the board. Number one, my education far exceeds a lot of people. My servitude, I basically get people food with the help of the police. I mentor kids in communities like Robinwood, Newtown 20, Bywaters, and Town. Yes, I served in the military. Yes, I am willing to put my life on the line for someone else. I am not a victim. My son, he's a lieutenant commander for the Navy. He's the XO of a current submarine right now. So don't tell me that people of color can't get qualified for this bill. You're trying to circumvent something that they spent a lot of time looking over. And you try to disqualify them by saying that they're white. That's ridiculous. Look at the bill. It stands for something. You have officers right now who are putting their lives on the line for you guys, people of color. Anyways, there are good people out there that need to have fair people without bias to represent them in any kind of allegation against them. This is a great bill as written, and for people that think otherwise, they're thinking on emotions, not logic. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This panel is dismissed. Thank you all for your testimony. At this time, if there's anyone else that would like to come down, you may step on down to the table. Thank you, Reverend Morris. When you're ready, state your name and address for the record. You have 2 minutes.
Good evening. I'm Marguerite Morris, P.O. Box 508, Odenton, Maryland. I want to say good evening, everyone. I want to say good evening to the fine officers that are behind me as well, and everyone here listening to me. I want to say for the record that we do believe that there are many fine, outstanding police officers. But as I've testified before, I'm also a witness to know that everybody is not a fine, outstanding officer. So let's just count this for how we're impacted by those officers that are not. I know firsthand what it's like as we approach the 10th anniversary of my daughter's passing, and it took me 9 years to be heard, for it to come back that the Anne Arundel County Police Department and the medical examiner for the state of Maryland had erred. It should not take any mom 9 years just to have a conversation about what we're asking you about tonight. My organization has advocated for impacted police and bad policing, impacted persons and bad policing. Most recently, a former state prosecutor testified, or gave us we have a recording of her, that testified about marginalized individuals, black and brown persons, being subjected to illegal body cavity searches on the side of the road in communities like Meade Village and Pioneer City, and a community that's in Annapolis. Currently we have, and I really don't want to bring this up again, but it's necessary. Currently we have a police chief that will not allow even our officers to meet with us just to talk about policies and improvements for others in our community. And all we have done is, again, this may not have been intended, but that's the way it did turn out. So we're asking you tonight just to consider, we do not live in a perfect community with police and our community. We do not, it's not perfect. We have many good officers, but we do still have some officers and their actions are troubling. When I talk about persons standing by the roadside being subjected to illegal body cavity searches, that's an illegal act. That's a civil rights violation. And nobody wants to hear it, and nobody cares about it. But it's factual, and it's happening in Anne Arundel County, and no one has done anything about it, and no one's listening. And as I close up, we had an individual that walked into my office 2 years after this testimony was heard and told us just recently that he was subjected to that kind of treatment. Not all officers.
Reverend Morris, your 2 minutes has expired. I need you to conclude your remarks.
I just want to say we're not talking about all the officers behind me. Many of them are fine, outstanding citizens. But we do have a few bad apples, and we need you to remember that as you listen to the voices of this community asking you to give us independent investigative rights. And one last thing, When we say investigations, we're not talking about us. We're talking about allowing us to be able to hire trained investigators to look into matters relevant for impacted persons in our community. Thank you for your time and patience.
Thank you very much. Ms. Buckman.
Hi, Emma Buckman, Severna Park, Maryland. I didn't plan on getting up here to speak tonight because I'm tired of being stepped on, and I can't even imagine how people like Reverend Morris must feel who have actually been impacted persons, and to get up here and be re-traumatized all over again, and just to listen to people legislate about her that don't look like her, and to see, let's see, 2/5 of the county council not even looking at me or her while she was testifying. So I just want to say, like, I know you're not going to pass this bill tonight. Despite our hard work and despite our best efforts, you're not. So I'm just here to beg you to reflect on why you didn't, and maybe start a journey of your own anti-racist journey, because you clearly haven't started it yet. And I also want to point out that the person who was speaking in favor of the Police Accountability Board, it represents a lot of the misunderstandings, because when people, activists, it's not our job to make you feel comfortable. It's not our job to make your jobs easier. It's our job to hold you accountable to the community. And instead of listening to us, you just assume you know what we want and how we feel and how we act and why we act the way we do. And that leads to misunderstandings like we had earlier tonight, where you don't understand where we're coming from, you just call us emotional and dismiss us. Well, just because we're emotional doesn't mean we don't have rights, and it doesn't mean we don't deserve justice and accountability from the people who are supposed to be protecting us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You two ladies are dismissed. And I'll make one last call if anyone would like to come down and testify. You have 2 minutes. State your name and address for the record, please.
Name is Mike Mattia, live in 108 Oakford Avenue, Edgewater, Maryland. And I'm here to respond to some of the testimony that I've heard about being pulled over for nothing, okay? Little background, I've been driving over 50-some years, commercial driver for over 40-some of those years. I have 9 grandchildren, 3 son-in-laws. 2 of those son-in-laws are African American. 7 of my grandchildren are mixed race. So I asked them independently of each other, because those 2 guys don't like each other. They share the same ex-wife. That's another whole ball game. But I asked them independently, have you ever been pulled over for nothing, for no reason at all? Now, believe me when I tell you, these 2 guys are not fans of law enforcement. They've had their run-ins with them from many levels. And they thought long and hard. They straight up with me, because that's the way I've always been with them. I asked them, have you ever been pulled over for no reason at all? And both of them thought about it and said, no, every time I was pulled over, it was for a reason. I was doing something wrong. There was something wrong with the vehicle. One said when they first passed that tinted window law, he went out and got his windows tinted. You couldn't see inside with a flashlight, okay? You couldn't see inside with anything. He got pulled over for that, had to go rehab his windows tinted later, you know. They both said each and every time that they'd been involved with law enforcement while driving, it was for a reason, an accident, speeding, weaving, doing something. But each and every time, it was for a reason. I know a lot of police officers from PG County, went to school with a lot of them. They went up through the ranks in PG County. They asked me, and I've asked them, have you ever pulled over anybody for no reason at all? And they said, we're not looking to make work for ourselves. We go out and we pull somebody over because it's a reason. That's our job. Not to just randomly pull you over, but it's for a violation of some type. When I hear these people say, no, they're pulling them over all the time, you know, people of color, for no reason at all, I'm wondering where they're driving at, because the jurisdictions and officers that I know from the state police, Anne Arundel County, PG County, and Charles County, and Washington, D.C., none of them have said that.
Sir, your 2 minutes.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. And one final call. And in the gold sweater.
My name is James Teal. I'm actually from Bryan's Road, Maryland. I wasn't going to speak tonight, but I've actually had some terrible experiences with police in Montgomery County. I was actually attacked 2 years ago. I was pulled over for a reason, but in actuality, the police officer had been hunting. He actually stopped at a green light, and when I took over the right-of-way, assuming he wasn't going to move, he pulled in behind me, pulled me over, and he used de-escalation tactics in reverse to make what seemed like a moving violation into a living hell. I was attacked, abducted, I was tortured. They actually used the euphemism pain compliance, so that it sounds that it's something that's legal. There's actually a torture master at the facility at Seven Locks Prison in Montgomery County. This is an institutional thing. This is not just a few bad apples. We really need accountability. I complained to the governor. I complained to state's attorneys. I complained to everybody I could. And all that happened was everybody told me to go back to the same people that abused me, talk to internal affairs. What am I supposed to do? Who am I supposed to go to? How am I supposed to know that I get a fair shake, that I get somebody looking after me? Instead, we have a justice system that throws victims under the bus because they don't want to have liability for their officers. So we, the people, need to have the responsibility in our hands for those who are allegedly there to protect us with violent weapons, chains, and other devices that they have in little prisons all throughout this country. I yield my time.
Thank you very much.
Harrison. I'm the Research and Policy Analyst for CASA in Baltimore and Central Maryland. I also did not have a speech prepared today, but I did want to show up for our coalition for the police accountability of Anne Arundel County. One thing that I just wanted to bring up from listening to everyone is, well, first of all, I'm not from Maryland. I am from California, and things are quite different in California racially and just socioeconomically. And I just kind of want you guys to think more about confirmation bias rather than white supremacy. Maybe that word is hitting you hard and you don't want to think about being a white supremacist, but think about confirmation bias. The fact that people are telling you what you want to hear and you're just agreeing with it, instead of thinking logically about what we're saying. We're saying that the police cannot police themselves because they've proven that they can't. Most of my work is focused in Baltimore City, in which we have just released a report for the GTTF, the Gun Trace Task Force, and have uncovered just unsurmountable amounts of police misconduct that has been covered up by police departments. And I feel like you guys understand what we're saying, and whether or not you want to take that into account is another thing. And like Councilwoman Hare, I also am a God-fearing woman. I ask God every day, is my line of work okay? I'm also, just like I looked into you, you're highly educated. I'm a graduate of the University of California, Berkeley, the #1 school, but that doesn't take away my understanding of people. And I hope that that doesn't take away your understanding of people either. That you can relate to those who are everyday folks who go through police misconduct. I've never interacted with the police, but my family members have. You know what I mean? There's levels of privilege, and I just hope y'all can just please recognize this, even if you, I'm not going to say if you don't vote for our amendments, because I really hope you will vote for our amendments and vote against this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You are both dismissed. And I know I've said one final call, but I'm going to say it one more time, maybe 5 if people keep coming. I want to make sure everyone has the opportunity to be heard. All right, seeing no movement in the audience at this time, the public hearing on Bill number 16-22 as amended is now closed. Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill number 16-22 as amended.
Bill number 1622, an ordinance concerning Police Accountability Board.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, we do have a number of amendments tonight. Please read amendment number 67.
Excuse me, amendment number 67. This amendment exempts up to 2 appointees to the Police Accountability Board, excluding the chair, from the prohibition to appointment for prior criminal history.
Thank you. And Ms. Lacey, this is your amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You may have the floor.
Thank you. Okay, so to my colleagues, this is a new amendment, but it is based on a prior amendment that would have limited the number of retired law enforcement officers who could serve on the PAB at any one time to 2, so that they would never have, those officers would never have a voting majority on the PAB. It came to my attention today that as I had crafted the amendments that we will go to after this one, which are about limiting the ability of people with certain prior convictions from holding any position of voting power, essentially, in the PAB, the ACC, or the hearing boards, that I had not actually gone back to limit the number of people who could have these convictions and serve on the board. I'm trying to do all that because this altogether represents a final attempt on my part after four or more attempts, I've lost track, to try to reach a compromise on the prior convictions issue. And with that, I hope you'll support it. I have a longer statement I'll make later, and I move to adopt Amendment 67.
Is there a second? I will second. All right. Mr. Barron, if you would like to, if the administration would like to respond.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Councilwoman Lacey. We've had numerous discussions on this. The administration's position has not changed. I think when we drafted the bill, we tried to draw a reasonable line. I think reasonable people can disagree over where that line would be. We prefer the bill as we drafted it.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from my colleagues? Go ahead, Ms. Lacey.
Nobody else has light? Okay. Are you sure? All right. Well, I suppose now is a good time to go ahead and read my big statement so I can get it out of the way. Okay, so as I mentioned, I have tried at least 4 times to amend this provision relating to prior convictions, which, as we all know, HB 670 was silent on the issue of whether a member of the PAB, ACC, or trial board, hearing board as we now call it, could have these certain prior convictions. So this is matter that we are adding that the state law is not requiring, and I think that given that we are talking about individual people who are members of a board to judge individual police officers and their conduct, it is appropriate to look very carefully at what these prior convictions are or might be and what they mean, whether or not they have any predictive value for a person's character or future conduct by the time they have served their sentence, their parole, their probation, and have paid their debt to society from the given convictions. Could they possibly be considered as worthy enough of serving on the PAB? And I've reflected on this from many perspectives, not just asking lots and lots of people, also based on my legal education, my experience as an attorney, a defense attorney, a criminal defense attorney at that, as someone who has brought civil rights cases against the Baltimore Police Department and against the state of Maryland and has won those cases. All of that is background and bias that I cannot let go of. And I know you would never put me on the PAB, just like no one will put me on a jury. But now I have to tell you a little bit more than I thought I was going to have to say. First, prior convictions are not inherently reliable predictors of future behavior or of a person's character. That's an issue that's actually hotly debated in criminal law under Federal Rule of Evidence 609, which is a rule that governs whether or not a person's prior conviction can be used to impeach their credibility when they are a defendant at a subsequent trial or a witness in a civil trial, for example. That rule is recognized by judges across the country, up through our Supreme Court, legal scholars around the country, everywhere, that it is a potent rule and is the most controversial rule of evidence because once the jury hears that a person has been convicted of a felony in their new trial, the jury is very likely to believe, even though they are instructed that it is not evidence that the person convicted, it should be convicted of the second later crime, it has been found over and over again that this kind of evidence convinces the jury. And the jury then applies that knowledge and they say, okay, this person is more likely than not, this person is beyond a reasonable doubt, guilty of this crime, when you take that piece of a prior conviction and you add it to the other circumstances of a crime. In fact, a lot of criminal defendants choose to plead if they do have a second case, just to avoid the likelihood that they will be impeached with that prior conviction because of its superbly prejudicial value compared to its probative value. Probative meaning whether or not it actually lends to a fact helpful for determining the case. So if there's so much controversy around prior convictions, then I think one of the things that means for us today in 2022, after decades of study and experience in the law and all sorts of civil unrest and upheaval, that we can look and say, maybe we shouldn't just see a prior conviction as a bar. Maybe it's more like a curtain, and we need to look behind the curtain. We need to give people a chance and find out, well, okay, what else do you have to say? You have this thing that speaks for you, and I can either let that speak for you entirely and think nothing else of who you are as a person, or I can be willing to look behind the curtain and determine whether or not you are Oz, or whether, you know what, actually, I think circumstances have changed for you since you paid your debt to society, and now you're here and you want to serve on a board that has to do with police accountability. Now is the unscripted part of my speech. The scripted part is this. I've been trying to reconcile in my mind what our represented police officers have been telling me is the reason why they want this prior conviction ban to stand absolute as it is drafted in this bill. They feel it is important because they do not want a system whereby they could be judged by criminals who clearly have an axe to grind. They say there are plenty of people who have never been convicted of a crime who can serve on the Police Accountability Board, the ACC, or a hearing board. I don't disagree with that. It's a fact that the ex-felon population is a tiny, tiny fraction of county residents. Nonetheless, they want a blanket ban on people with certain prior convictions, including PBJs, or probation before judgment, which is not actually a conviction. In support, they cite the scriptural admonishment, "Let he who is without sin cast the first stone." Now, this of course comes from the well-known story of the woman caught in the act of adultery who was, according to the Pharisees, supposed to be stoned to death. She wasn't, because Jesus called out the Pharisees' hypocrisy. None of them were without sin. The apparent irony of relying on this verse to avoid being judged by sinful people is that there are no sinless people. Plenty of people who have never been convicted of any crime listed in our bill are unrighteous in their hearts and their conduct. No, the real judgment that has been brought to light these past several weeks is the ancient but false belief that once a criminal, always a criminal. Meaning, there are enough good people who can serve that we need not waste our time considering even one individual with a record. But an essential part of the story has been omitted. After the Pharisees left, Jesus forgave the adulterous woman and told her to go and sin no more. This is the part that reveals that rehabilitation is possible, that once a criminal, always a criminal is merely a simplistic canard that enables us to blame the system that we set up for an unjust, disparate outcome. Jesus could have stoned the woman to death, but he showed mercy. He told her to re-enter her community and live as a rehabilitated, restored person. Rehabilitation is possible. Therefore, we have hope. Studies have repeatedly shown that rehabilitation is key to reducing recidivism. Restoring the voting rights of people who have served their sentence or, under Maryland law since 2016, are still on parole or probation is a significant part of restoring the ex-offender to participation in community life. Serving on a community board like the PAB, even without being permitted to hold a seat on the ACC or the hearing board or to serve as chair or to vote on any individual officer's case, is highly meaningful from a restoration perspective. The people we are talking about, however few they are, deserve at least the bare minimum from us, that we not erect another systemic barrier separating them from us without first considering them as individuals. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you, Ms. Lacey. And I hadn't planned to comment on this amendment, but I have some personal experience that I'd like to share in this regard as well. Even though I always talk about my time as a teacher, I actually used to be an attorney. And my first year after law school, I was a clerk in D.C. Superior Court in the criminal division. I clerked in the felony division. And in D.C., their felony division is divided up into felony 1 and felony 2. I don't want to say jokingly, but loosely called felony 1 at the time. This was close to 20 years ago. But rapes and murders was felony 1, and felony 2 was drugs and guns. I was working with a judge who was assigned to a felony 2 cases. So all of our cases were drug cases and gun cases. And I spent a year in this position, and we had, half a dozen cases every day, several dozen cases every week. Occasionally, we had a trial. Most things ended up getting resolved before trial through a plea agreement or whatnot. But when a case reached the sentencing phase, whether it was, through a plea agreement or through a trial where someone was, actually, brought before a jury or before a bench trial or whatever, they always had a pre-sentencing report. And the pre-sentencing report was one of the things that I regularly read in these cases. And first off, in the vast majority of the cases, were young black males. Probably in their 20s, sometimes in their 30s, sometimes females, sometimes non-black, black defendants. But the vast majority were young black males. And when I would read about when I would read the pre-sentencing report, a lot of times they would tell sort of the life stories and the experiences of the individuals who were about to be sentenced. And almost every single one had a life experience that I know no one who would want to trade their life experience with. They would, have some major gap in their education, some horrible trauma in their family, some history of substance abuse in their family, systems or experiences of moving from one household to another and sort of being passed around. And so the common theme was experiences of trauma. And, in the end, these led to felony convictions. You connect the dots in certain ways. And was that necessarily an outcome? Of course not. There are young people that survive remarkable circumstances and go on to succeed, but they're not if you have, multiple trauma in your young life, the odds are not always in your favor. And, just from that experience, I don't know what the demographics of defendants for drug and gun offenses are in Anne Arundel County. Obviously the overall demographics from Washington, D.C. and Anne Arundel County are quite different. But I would not be surprised if it leaned heavily towards the more impoverished, more traumatized, more challenged parts of our community. And I don't want that segment of our community that has experienced trauma to be left out of a process where I think they have where there are valuable contributions to be made. And I think that this amendment is actually a very reasonable compromise in that it addresses the concerns of, you know, if there is some sort of axe to grind, you can't make any effective swing of that axe with only 2 appointees. And so I just really hope that my colleagues will sort of open their hearts and open their minds to the fact that, you know, there are people who maybe didn't overcome the trauma of their young lives in their 20s, and they ended up in front of a judge, they ended up going to prison, or they ended up going to whatever kind of, you know, sentence they may have experienced, but but I'm a believer, and I hope my colleagues are a believer in forgiveness and in second chances and in the possibility of redemption. I think everyone in here, everyone in this room can think of something that they have done in their life that they regret, and they would wish they hadn't done or wish they had handled in a different way. These are things that you know, sometimes don't have anything to do with interaction with the law, and those people are not ineligible the way folks who have had their you know, their faults brought in front of the justice system in a public way. And so I implore my colleagues to support this amendment. Any other comments or questions from my colleagues? All right, seeing none, Madam Secretary, please call the roll on amendment number 67.
Mr. Pruski.
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler.
Nay.
Ms. Hare.
Nay.
Ms. Lacy.
Aye.
Ms. Pickard.
Nay.
Mr. Volke.
Nay.
Ms. Rodvian.
Aye.
3 in the affirmative, 4 in the negative. Amendment number 67 has failed.
All right, for clarity's sake, my understanding is that if 67 is not adopted, 68 and 69 are withdrawn. Is that correct? So 68, Amendment 68 and Amendment 69 are withdrawn, and at this time we will move on to Amendment number 70. Madam Secretary, please read Amendment number 70.
Amendment number 70. This amendment removes the prohibition against a person being appointed as a voting member of the Police Accountability Board if they have been convicted of certain crimes, and prohibits a person being appointed as chair of the board if they have been convicted of certain crimes.
Thank you. Again, Ms. Lacy, this is your amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This amendment and the following two go to the idea of, again, removing people who have this list of prior convictions in their history from being able to have a leadership role on the PAB, and then the next two are go to the ACC and the hearing board. So I suppose we'll just stick with this one amendment rather than bothering to try to bundle them up, but it's all a related idea, one sweep to try to prevent stone throwing. And with that, I move to amend.
Rodvian, second. And Mr. Barron, the administration, if you would like to respond.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I think, again, appreciate the discussion. I think it's important. I think the administration has been clear. This has been a difficult place where we decided to draw the line. We're comfortable where we drew the line, and therefore would like the bill to remain as we drafted it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion or questions from my colleagues? Madam Secretary, please call the roll on amendment number 70.
Mr. Pruski.
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler.
Nay.
Ms. Hare.
Nay.
Ms. Lacy.
Aye.
Ms. Pickard.
Nay.
Mr. Volke.
Nay.
Ms. Rodvian.
Aye.
3 in the affirmative, 4 in the negative. Amendment number 70 has failed.
Thank you. I need to ask the lead sponsor of 71 and 72. Do we go forward with these amendments?
Yes, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. In that case, Madam Secretary, please read amendment number 71.
Amendment 71. This amendment removes the prohibition against a person being appointed as a voting member of the Police Accountability Board if they have been convicted of certain crimes, and prohibits a person being appointed as a voting member of the Administrative Charging Committee if they have been convicted of certain crimes.
Ms. Lacy, you're the lead sponsor. You may make a statement.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to adopt.
And Rodvian second. Mr. Barron, you may speak on behalf of the administration.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Repeat my comments from the previous two amendments, but will add one piece of context for the administrative charging committees and for the hearing boards, called trial boards at the state law. The Maryland Police Training and Standards Commission is in the process of creating regulations. I think I mentioned this at a previous meeting. When we drafted our bill, we tried to stick close to what we thought they were going to do. Those regulations are not out yet, but all indications are that you would be prohibited from serving on the Administrative Charging Committee or the Hearing Board if you have a felony conviction or a misdemeanor conviction of more than 1 year and a PBJ. So just for added context, but the administration's position remains the same. We prefer the bill as we drafted it. Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Ms. Lacy.
I have a question for the administration, that if that remains the administration's position, then do you read this amendment as applying to the administration's appointees to the ACC or only to the PAB's appointees to the ACC?
Say that again. I'm sorry, I don't follow.
Yes, Mr. Barron, as I've drafted this amendment, it only applies to the members who would be appointed to the ACC by the PAB and not
I
by the
understand now.
administration, which means actually the ACC has 2 members that the county executive could appoint right now, regardless of whether or not they have any prior convictions, right?
All the appointments, whether generated by the PAB or the county executives to appointees, will have to meet the qualifications laid out by the Maryland Police Training and Standards Commission.
No doubt, but I'm pointing out that this position's inconsistent with the administration's certain other positions on the membership and qualification to the board, which I'm not going to argue now, but I'm just pointing out. This only applies to the PAB's appointees.
Understood.
Seeing no additional lights, Madam Secretary, please call the roll on amendment number 71.
Mr. Pruski.
No.
Ms. Fiedler.
Nay.
Ms. Hare.
Nay.
Ms. Lacy.
Aye.
Ms. Pickard.
Nay.
Mr. Volkey.
Nay.
Ms. Rodvian.
Aye.
2 in the affirmative, 5 in the negative. Amendment number 71 has failed.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Please read amendment number 72.
Amendment number 72. This amendment removes the prohibition against a person being appointed as a voting member of the Police Accountability Board if they have been convicted of certain crimes, and prohibits a person being appointed as a voting member of a hearing board if they have been convicted of certain crimes.
Again, Ms. Lacy, you are the lead sponsor. You
Motion
may
to
make a
adopt.
statement. Rodvian second. And Mr. Barron.
Same position as the others. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from my colleagues? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, please call the roll on amendment number 72.
Mr. Pruski.
No.
Ms. Fiedler.
Nay.
Ms. Hare.
Nay.
Ms. Lacy.
Aye.
Ms. Pickard.
Nay.
Mr. Volkey.
Nay.
Ms. Rodvian.
Aye.
2 in the affirmative, 5 in the negative. Amendment number 72 has failed.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Please read amendment number 73.
Amendment number 73. This technical amendment removes the reference of a non-existent vice chair position and moves certain requirements of the Administrative Charging Committee and hearing boards to be under the proper section in the bill.
Thank you. This is an amendment co-sponsored by Ms. Pickard and myself. And Ms. Pickard, I think you beat me to the punch on the sponsorship, so if you'd like to make a statement.
Mr. Pruski.
Oh, I'm sorry, AP. It's very confusing. AP is not Allison Pickard here, it's Andrew Pruski.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
My apologies.
This is a technical amendment. For those that understand that, it's to clarify something. There is no vice chair. It's non-existent. It essentially puts the words in compliance with the law. And again, it's a simple technical amendment that does need to be revised, because if we don't have a vice chair, we can't list it. So that's essentially in legal terms what needs to be fixed. Thank you.
And I will make a motion to adopt.
Second.
All right, thank you. Mr. Barron, on behalf of the administration.
Just want to say thank you to Mr. Pruski, to you, Madam Chair, for bringing this amendment forward, and to the Office of Law for working with you to do this technical amendment. We support. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from my colleagues? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, please call the roll on amendment number 73.
Mr. Pruski.
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler.
Aye.
Ms. Hare.
Aye.
Ms. Lacy.
Aye.
Ms. Pickard.
Aye.
Mr. Volkey.
Aye.
Ms. Rodvian.
Aye.
7 in the affirmative, none in the negative. Amendment number 73 has been adopted.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Because the only amendment that was adopted this evening is a technical amendment, we can proceed to a final vote on the bill this evening. So before we do that, however, I'd like to give my colleagues an opportunity for any final questions, comments, discussion. Go ahead, Mr. Pruski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do want to take an opportunity to thank everyone that has testified on the bill. We've gotten a lot of testimony from citizens, residents, groups, and this is obviously a bill that has a lot at stake. I have a feeling that the state and others will continue to want to improve this bill. We don't have all the answers. I know I've been very frustrated and have shared with my state colleagues from their level in terms of that we work with it. There were some things that were very made unclear. And one thing I learned on this council is that if you have things that are unclear, somebody's going to sue and people will suffer. And what I mean by that is the people that are the police that are going through to have due process and the citizens that are expecting something. And the last thing that we want to do is to not pass a bill, at least provide structure, because we have to by law, whether we like that or not. And I think, again, there needs to be some clarifying pieces of what's allowed. One thing that I was quite taken back on is that people have said, well, you've never advocated for police accountability, and I find that quite striking because 5 years ago, a Republican colleague and I actually put in police body cameras as a resolution, and there were many people who were not happy about it. And that was never shared as a part of the record, and of course, now we have them because of certain circumstances that we've had in our country. So to talk about the fact that we have not, or some of us have not been advocating for change is completely wrong. We have a record of things that we have to do, and we will continue to do that. So again, I appreciate the work that has gone on. I know Mr. Barron, the chief, the citizens that are here. Thank you again for taking a part in this process. Government continues, and sometimes we have to update and change things, but I hope overall that we can continue to move the conversation in a positive manner because that's what always has to take place, is us to get better. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from my colleagues? All right, seeing none, I would like to just chime in for a moment. I'm ultimately going to support this bill, even though a lot of the things that I would have liked to see in it as amendments did not pass. I'm hoping that this is not the last time that we address this subject of, our system for police accountability. I hope that the state takes up some of these question marks, some of these ambiguities that we've, spent late nights debating about. What can we do? What can't we do? What process was intended? I had really hoped, and I think I've expressed it more than once, an accountability board that really had independence, that was able to conduct its own investigation, but that's not where we ended up. On the other hand, I don't think we would be wise to go forward without any accountability system. I understand that we may be able to, someone may be able to bring their complaint of misconduct in the courts, but the reality is the courts can be very difficult to access. They can be very expensive to access, and this puts a process in place. It may not be a perfect process. I hope that we can come back and examine it and see how it works going down, going down the road. But I believe that we have to have a starting point, even if it's a starting point that isn't the one that we wanted. So I'm ultimately going to support this, and that is where I fall. All right, and seeing no further red lights or flags, Madam Secretary, please call the roll on Bill number 16-22 as amended.
Mr. Pruski.
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler.
Aye.
Ms. Hare.
Aye.
Ms. Lacy.
Nay.
Ms. Pickard.
Aye.
Mr. Volkey.
Aye.
Ms. Rodvian.
Aye.
6 in the affirmative, 1 in the negative. Bill number 1622 has passed.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill number 24-22.
Bill number 2422, an ordinance concerning personnel and public ethics positions in the exempt service.
And this is an administration bill. Mr. Barron, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Badowski is making her way up here, and Ms. Blair Klausmeyer is sticking with me. As you recall, we introduced this bill the meeting after we introduced the Police Accountability Bill. This is the companion bill. It includes the position control for the new executive director role for the Police Accountability Board. As I think we've all discussed at length. Do you want me to wait?
Mr. Barron, yeah, I can actually see that people are genuinely trying to be quiet, but there's a lot of movement in the audience, so we're just going to hold for a moment here. And I appreciate everyone's attempts to, keep the noise down and the volume down. If you, be nice and loud.
I will try. So I think one of the things, Madam Chair, that you said just recently in the wrap-up of 1622 is important. That isn't the last of the work that needs to be done on police accountability. This position will help ensure that the Police Accountability Board can and does build trust in the community, provide fairness for our officers, and improve matters of policing. We urge you to pass this bill today.
All right, are there any questions or comments from my colleagues? I think Ms. Fiedler was ahead by a hair.
No pun intended. Thank you, Madam Chair. Amanda Fiedler, District 5. So the executive director position, would there be any legal reason, and perhaps there is, and I just missed it, why the executive director could not fulfill some work duties for either the hearing board? You get where I'm going with this line of questioning. Okay.
So we intentionally didn't draft it into the legislation because we're waiting on the regulations from the state. It would have to be done at the direction of those bodies. It's our intent that we're going to have a person who's qualified and has the skills and could lend a hand to those entities. So there's going to be one charging committee, but there will be multiple hearing boards, and they're actually seated in the law enforcement agency that where the allegation of misconduct is. So we can't mandate for like a city of Annapolis, but our intent is to make the person available to help. That's maybe not a clear and direct answer, but time will tell. I mean, no jurisdiction in the state has implemented a police accountability board because they are created new by the General Assembly. So we're going to be learning a lot over the next year, 2 or 3 years, and where the duties overlap and can be shared. The intention in this bill is to create an executive director for the Police Accountability Board. That is where their duties will live. We assume they will let them use the copy machine and help out on things, but that's not written into the bill because it hasn't existed yet until now.
Ms. Hare.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jessica Hare, District 7. Mr. Barron, how did you land on an E7 as the appropriate pay grade. The bill says that the executive director may be compensated. It's not required. And in looking at kind of duties and things they're going to do and trying to compare it to the level of effort of other departments in the county and trying to compare, I'm just trying to figure out kind of how you landed there and the workload you're anticipating for that executive director.
So we are in a little bit of uncharted territory. One of the amendments that the administration supported, that council members, I believe it was Council Member Lacey's initiative, it might not have been your amendment in the end, but it was your idea, that requires the executive director to be an attorney, sort of raises the education bar for entry. But we also felt that the work, and I think you heard it here in this chamber over the past several meetings, the work that this board will have is significant. And we felt that it was appropriate for it to be a high-level position.
Mr. Volkey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Barron, you and I emailed about this a while back, and I'd asked about the workload, so I'm just going to go back to those questions. I think the concern that I have with this bill is we're really not clear what the workload is going to be, particularly in light of the way that the Police Accountability Board is now a bit more, I've heard this used as sort of a term to detract from the board, and I don't mean it that way, but some people have called it a police advisory board. The idea is that they're going to meet and they're probably going to give recommendations on policy changes, that they're also going to be able to get the complaints, if any, are filed. But the real work of the investigation is going to be with the charging commission or committee. So I guess what I'm struggling with this bill is understanding, is this level of staffing justified? I think the answer that you've given is we really don't know. We're going to figure that out. I think you're taking an educated guess. I think my challenge with it is I would probably take an educated guess on a lesser side and see if then we need to come back and ask for more staff, as opposed to a full staff up and then say, oh, wait a minute, now we've hired people, but we don't necessarily have the workload to justify that. So it's sort of two different approaches, but I would be interested to hear from you how it is that you all determined that 2 staff positions are necessary for this board, particularly in light of the edits and the changes that this council has made. So hopefully that made sense.
No, it did, Councilmember Volkey, and it's an important question. The model we did look at was the ethics board. There's an executive director and administrative staff. I read this comment on the last bill, but one of the PAB will meet quarterly with every head of every law enforcement agency. That's state law. But they're going to review and make recommendations on policy, yes, but they're also hopefully going to be diving into data. I mean, we heard allegations and instances of bias, whether implicit or explicit, in the operation of law enforcement. The executive director is going to look at the data. I mean, we heard people speculate here at the table at what those incidences are. We should have somebody who's qualified to do the staff level work, to provide the Police Accountability Board with the relevant materials. But they're also going to look at things that, affect officer morale, right? Do the officers' ticket system that they're entering into the computer crash every 15 minutes and need to be rebooted, and what changes need to be there, and is there a policy recommendation to dump a vendor or go to something? So you're right, we don't know what it is. I actually think we might be erring on I think we are erring on the conservative side of staffing for what this is. So, the Ethics Commission is I think, a good model. They do have complex issues that they're looking at, and they have to provide a board with the staff has to provide a board with the relevant information to make educated and informed decisions. And that's our purpose with Bill 2422.
Any additional comments or questions? Go ahead, Ms. Fiedler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Amanda Fiedler, District 5. So I understand that the type of work is significant in importance. What I'm trying to understand is it going to be significant in volume? And I know that you don't have a magic ball that would tell you what that's, I think, we're kind of asking the same questions, yeah. But is there some indication that there's going to be a significant volume?
I mean, so we are a county of almost 600,000 people, right? We are a big county. We have a large law enforcement agency in the city of Annapolis. We have a sheriff's operation that's quite large. We have our police department. And then we have all the citizens of the county. So I'm going to start playing the lottery if you guys keep asking me to predict things, but my track record on the lottery hasn't been so good. My point is we don't know, but we took an educated guess. I mean, you see on the amount of work the state laid out for the police accountability boards is significant. And we wanted to get off on the right foot. We want their first annual report to have the staff support to make it successful. So we might come back in a year or two and say, we undershot and we need, more administrative help or another attorney in there, or we might have hit it on the nail on the head. But I think it's important to meet the requirements of 1622, that we have a qualified executive director and administrative staff. I'm confident that they're going to have enough work to keep them busy.
Ms. Hare.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jessica Hare, District 7. Along similar lines, you referenced the ethics board as sort of a bit of a model. And so in looking at the pay schedule for the executive director of the ethics board, it does not look to me like that is on par with what's being suggested here. Is there any willingness to revisit the level of pay that you're suggesting in this bill to make it more commensurate with the ethics board or some other number, and come back and revisit it at another time?
I don't have it in front of me. Is the, sorry, Madam Chair. I'm sure you do, Mr. Volke. Is it E5?
It says
it's an E2.
E2.
EE2.
EE2, which is its own
Yeah,
category.
so I'm going to turn this over to Ms. Badowski.
Ann Badowski, Personnel Officer. Those are on different scales, and I think what I'm thinking that Mr. Barron was meaning to say was that he was looking at a smaller, independent executive director, similar to what we had just come forward with the resiliency director, which was of this level as well. And so I think we were trying to match and look along those lines based on a review of the state legislation and our initial support. So when we looked at it, we could support this level based on our review of sort of what was being charged by the state to the county, and then what we had drafted here before you, which has since, of course, been amended. But
sure, I guess I'm just asking if given the concerns that we don't know exactly how much work is going to be there, is there any willingness to kind of reevaluate the level that you've set it at in here in this bill? Because I am concerned that this is not necessarily justified yet in terms of this level, given all of the unknowns. And it is easier to go up than it is to go the other direction.
So I think the council can adjust as you see fit. The county executive submitted this bill at this level. We're comfortable with this bill at this level.
Mr. Volke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I was just following along this same rationale of where Councilwoman Hare was. So the executive director, as you've proposed it in this bill, is an EO7. the executive director of the Ethics Commission is an EEO2. So the salary range for that person is $68,871 to $122,968. So basically $69,000 to $123,000. Your range for this person appears to be about $105 to $184. So it's a pretty significant difference in terms of the range, almost $60,000 on the bottom and on the top. So if we're looking at the Ethics Commission as the equivalent, did I do my math right? 40 on the bottom, 60 on the top, though, because if it's 123 on the top and it's 184, I think I got close. But anyway, my point with it just is, if we're talking apples to apples, Ethics Commission, this being similar, it seems like we're kind of shooting a bit higher. And that Ethics Commission director has to be a lawyer, too.
So, thank you, Mr. Volke. I never said apples to apples.
Ms. Pickard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do believe, in all fairness to the task at hand with the Police Accountability Board versus the task at hand with the Ethics Commission, it is a little different. So I'm comfortable with the bill as written, and I think we are requiring, and it was the will of this council, that this person be an attorney. And you and other people on this council are attorneys and know what a good attorney costs. So I think for a sitting in judgment and advising our police department on policy, I'm happy with the E7.
All right. Seeing no additional lights, questions, I just wanted to remind the public that's present or watching or listening that the public hearing on this bill was held and closed on March 21st. Is there going to, I'm sorry to ask, is there going to be a motion to hold here? Or is there a request for a motion to hold this bill again?
We would love for you to pass it tonight.
All right. Well, then that said, seeing no lights requesting motions to hold, Madam Secretary, please call the roll on bill number 24-22.
Mr. Pruski.
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler.
Nay.
Ms. Hare.
Nay.
Ms. Lacy.
Aye.
Ms. Pickard.
Aye.
Mr. Volke.
Nay.
Ms. Rodvian.
Aye.
4 in the affirmative, 3 in the negative. Bill number 2422 has been passed.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, please read the title of bill number 30-22.
Bill number 3022, an ordinance concerning Anne Arundel County Open Data Act.
All right. Again, this is an administration bill. Mr. Barron, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Joining me is Ms. Funch from Arundelstat, our Arundelstat Director, and Lori Blair-Klausmeyer from the Office of Law is sticking with us. So we're excited to bring this bill before you. I think if the agenda had been a little different, this bill would have been the star of the night. 3022 makes good on a core promise of this administration to make county government more transparent. 3022 codifies requirements for the county to make certain data sets available to the public online in an easily accessible manner. You might have seen a press release that we did today about our open budget tool. That is improving county residents' ability to see where their tax dollars go. It's an improvement on some assets we put out in previous budget years, and moving forward, county residents can, in an easily public portal accessible way, dive deeper into the budget. But this bill's bigger than that. It establishes an open data policy for county government that would require each department to publish comprehensive data sets. It would require an open data implementation plan that will be published and reviewable. The county already does put, and I mentioned the budget tool, but the county also does put some GIS data on its open data portion of Open Arundel, and some departments make certain data sets available for the public as a best practice. What 3222 does expands and codifies on these best practices, creating a single centralized place for county residents to access the data about their government. So our data expert, Ms. Funch, is here to answer any questions you may have, and we ask that you pass this bill this evening.
Thank you. Any questions from my colleagues? All right, we will now open the public hearing on Bill number 30-22. Madam Secretary, do we have any testimony received from members of the public?
No, Madam Chair, we did not receive anything ahead of time.
Thank you. We will now invite members of the audience who signed up before the meeting to address the council on Bill number 30-22. We did not have anyone signed up ahead of time, but if there is anyone here who wishes to address the council, you may come up to the table at this time. Seeing no movement in the audience, the public hearing on Bill number 30-22 is now closed. Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill number 30-22.
Bill number 3022, an ordinance concerning Anne Arundel County Open Data Act.
And are there any comments, questions? Seeing none. Madam Secretary, please call the roll on Bill number 30-22.
Mr. Pruski.
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler.
Aye.
Ms. Hare.
Aye.
Ms. Lacy.
Aye.
Ms. Pickard.
Aye.
Mr. Volkey.
Aye.
Ms. Rodvian.
Aye.
7 in the affirmative, none in the negative. Bill number 3022 is passed.
I'm glad to hear something called the Open Data Act is passed unanimously. All right, Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill number 31-22.
Bill number 3122, an ordinance concerning zoning, BRAC, mixed-use development.
All right, this is Ms. Lacy and Mr. Pruski's bill. If either of you would like to make a brief statement, you may. I see pointing at Mr. Pruski. You may have the floor.
I'm going to be very brief because this, in my opinion, is a very straight to the point forward bill. For those of you that haven't been following, or you've heard this on several occasions, Fort Meade is the largest employer in the state of Maryland. Will continue to be in that spot and will continue to grow. I remember being at a Central Maryland Chamber of Commerce meeting about 2 months ago when the garrison commander got up and said the number of people that were continuing to come to our area, and we need flexibility and we need it now. Because if you look at where people are trying to live, and one example is actually a school right near me that obviously has overcrowding and other issues, but this is more about providing housing for those employees. We are addressing many of the other pieces, still meets adequate facilities. And this is also limited, just like an R22 bill that's going to be coming forward. So again, this is a targeted bill. I think it makes sense for the area. I hope that we can come together and support something that's going to help support Fort Meade and the area. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pruski. Ms. Lacy, if you'd like to.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Seniority, should go first. This bill, I think, to just add further detail, the differences between what are we trying to change here is that the former BRAC bill or BRAC designation used to apply across the whole county. Under this bill, it only applies to a 4-mile radius around Fort Meade, so it's more concentrated. And under the former conditions, it also would require that the parcels be at least 25 acres. This bill brings that down to 5 in recognition that within this 4-mile radius, where over the past 12 years or so, there has been so much buildup that the available parcels are smaller, but to compensate, the bill also adds a requirement that wasn't in the prior BRAC bill, that when you are going to fill in one of these spots, you have to, in the mixed zones, make an effort to conform and interconnect with the other built parcels that are already nearby. So it's, as far as I look at it, this is smart in being efficient with the use of land that we still have available to meet a need that we know we have with our largest employer that also brings great incomes for sustaining our families in our county, residents that we want, and we want their tax dollars. We want them to stay in the county. All of those things make this an easy bill for me, and I hope you all will agree.
Thank you. Mr. Barron.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Joining me at the table is our Deputy CAO for Land Use, Ms. Rhodes, from OPZ, Ms. Miller, and Lori Blair-Klausmeyer down at the opposite end of the table as usual. So want to thank the sponsors for sharing the drafts before introduction, taking some of our comments. I think, as Councilman Lacey stated, this shrinks the zone and adds a little bit of additional flexibility. We think it's a balanced bill to address many of the issues that Councilman Pruski was highlighting in his remarks. So with that, no need to belabor the point. We're comfortable with the bill.
Thank you very much. Seeing no lights from my colleagues, we will now open the public hearing on Bill number 31-22. Madam Secretary, do we have any testimony received from members of the public?
Yes, Madam Chair, we did receive one submission ahead of time through the online testimony tool. That went to the entire council. It's included in the summary that is posted online as well.
Thank you. And we will now invite members of the audience who signed up ahead of time to address the council on Bill number 31-22. Remarks will be limited to 2 minutes. There was no one who signed up in advance, but if there is anyone in the room who wishes to address the council on this bill, you are invited to come down at this time. And I see some movement in the audience, so come on down. All right, and I'm going to go from my right to left again. State your name and address for the record, and you have 2 minutes.
Yes, Madam Chairman, members of the council, David Plott. I'm an attorney, YVS Law in Annapolis. I'm at 185 Admiral Cochran Drive in Annapolis, and I'm here to testify in support of the bill. And we have a group here who can help answer any questions that the council may have. To my right is Thomas Falls with Corporate Office Properties Trust, Kenley Braze, also with YVS Law, Marilee Tortorelli with MRAs, engineer with a lot of experience around the base. And so if you have any questions, we're very happy to answer them. This bill, actually, there was a bill in 2010 that introduced the BRAC mixed-use overlay. It's tied to the 2009 General Development Plan. It's antiquated. It needed to be updated. So the purpose of this bill is to bring it into modern times now that you've adopted Plan 2040. And as Mr. Pruski is saying, it was originally intended to provide more flexibility with the base because lots of things are changing with the base, as was alluded to. Billions and billions of dollars of investment in office and growth, and unfortunately we live in a dangerous world, so the importance of the base, we're a premier facility in SA in the country, and it's only going to continue to grow. So what this bill does is allow flexibility with certain zones, which were, the C4 zone, W1 zone, mixed-use zones, which were part of the original legislation. So the fact is Congress is going to be putting growth into the base. The jobs are coming. It's a matter of, do the properties around them have the ability, the flexibility to respond to changing markets? And so that's what this bill does. Within those zones, you can develop under the underlying commercial or industrial, but it also gives you the flexibility to develop at an R15 residential density. If you develop those densities, no matter what you do, you still have to meet all the county regulations. Adequacy of public facilities for water and sewer, if it's residential, schools, roads, all the environmental requirements of the code are still in place. So the projects will still go through the reviews that are necessary to ensure and minimize impact. So we would ask that you support the bill and adopt it tonight.
Thank you very much. And you're next.
Thomas Falls with Corporate Office Properties Trust. We do office and data center development on land adjacent to the fort. I've been developing in Anne Arundel County now for about 15 years, so I've had the pleasure of meeting most of you. I'm here to strongly support the legislation which provides the needed flexibility to the C4, MXD, and W1 zones that was originally intended by the 2010 BRAC legislation. How do we introduce this? I'd like to introduce you a couple of documents. This first one from the Army Corps of Engineers. It's a publication from 2021, and as you'll see, I've highlighted a couple of things on it for y'all, but this is speaking not to just the fort, but just to the East Campus development, which many of you may have heard about. And it suggests and reflects how growth is really coming online right now as we speak. You'll see several assets, $4 to $5 billion of federal investment in just this campus on the fort is going on right now, which is primarily related to cyber-related office jobs. Several assets are being put in place as we speak. The East Campus Building 2 is under construction right now. It's a little bit shocking to hear some of these numbers. It's an 843,000 square foot facility that's under construction that comes online in the next few months and will have and house 3,100 positions. East Campus Building 3 is another 867,000 square foot building that comes online next year, and that will house another 3,700 positions. And then you got East Campus Building 4 and 5, which are on the books, which are of equal size. Now, I serve on the Region 2 Stakeholder Committee as appointed by the county executive to the regional plan. A few weeks ago, pardon me, I'll summarize real quick. Growth is here, growth is coming. This bill is needed to provide the intended flexibility of the zoning code to keep that properties close to the base may respond to these Marcus forces with a sustainable mix of uses. And I urge you to adopt the bill. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Ms. Bray, okay, I see your, go ahead.
Okay. I'm Marilee Tortorelli. I'm with Morrison Ritchie Associates. I'm in support of this bill. And to add to Thomas Faw's comments, I'm also on the Region 2, and we had a tour of the fort, and I was astounded by some of the numbers that they told us about, that there's, currently 63,000 workforce there, but they only have 11,000 units of housing there. So this bill is going to help with the flexibility to serve the fort, while also limiting it to a 4-mile radius, whereas the 2009 GDP had properties that were up by the airport. Other things that they had told us, though, that this will help with is 40,000 of those people currently live in Howard County. 20% of them also live in other, like Carroll County, I think, or Eastern Shore. So this should help with traffic because it'll pull people closer to the fort and provide more housing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Ronvian. Kinley Bray with YVS Law. Just not to belabor the point, but this is a use that is already existing in our code as a conditional use, and that means that a developer has the option to develop as a conditional use with an administrative approval or to develop as a matter of right with one of the permitted uses in the C4, W1, or MXD zones. This came about in 2010, and it, unlike a lot of our conditional uses in our code, was somewhat clunky in terms of its implementation, to use that an inartful term, but referencing the 2009 General Development Plan and then saying only those properties that have had a change from the 2009 General Development Plan makes it really difficult for anybody, any lawyer, any council person, any engineer, any attorney to very quickly identify which properties this would be qualified for this use. So what this does, I think, is clean up drafting. It makes it easier for everybody to understand where this use can go, in addition to providing flexibility. It doesn't supersede anything. It doesn't, and it's certainly, given the lack of control of the county over these jobs and these people that are coming anyway to Fort Meade, one of these figures indicates perhaps even a 25% increase over 1 year. That Region 2 stakeholder committee and the regional plan process is going to be taking some time. We're probably at least a year, if not more, away from seeing draft recommendations and acting upon them, and then comprehensive zoning will come next. There's no reason we can't do both of these things at the same time. These changes would simply create that flexibility that was intended by the legislative history of this conditional use created in 2010, tighten it up to make it clear which properties qualify, and again, create the linkages that Ms. Lacey mentioned so that these infill parcels aren't islands of small development that are not interconnected with the greater communities. So thank you.
Thank you very much. This panel is dismissed. And at this time, if there is anyone else that would like to testify on Bill 31-22, you may come down to the table. Seeing no movement in the audience, the public hearing on Bill number 31-22 is now closed. Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill number 31-22.
Bill number 3122, an ordinance concerning zoning, BRAC, mixed-use development.
Thank you, and I already see a light. Ms. Hare, you may have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jessica Hare, District 7. So I appreciate all the explanations that everybody's given us in the handouts. That's very helpful. I think there are some really good things about this bill. I like the connectivity piece of it. I think shrinking the area to make it close to Fort Meade makes a lot of sense. The one lingering area where I have some questions is on the reduction to the 5-acre minimum size for the parcel. And I know, Ms. Miller, I had reached out to Planning and Zoning only just today because I had had a couple of questions from constituents. It's the one area where I still have a couple of questions, and I'd love to really be able to get information to pass on to residents before we take a vote on this bill. So all of that to say, thank you for everyone answering my questions, but at this time I'm going to motion to hold just for 2 weeks to the next meeting so we have an opportunity to get some of that information and talk to the residents about it.
I will second.
We have no objection to a hold.
No objection to a hold.
Asking.
All right. And I guess this motion itself doesn't require debate. No, we will go right to the roll call. Thank you.
Mr. Pruski.
Before I say my vote, I do support the hold, but only in 2 weeks. I will not vote anything further after this. Thank you.
Ms. Fiedler.
Aye.
Ms. Hare.
Aye.
Ms. Lacey.
Aye.
Ms. Pickard.
Aye.
Mr. Volke.
Aye.
Ms. Rodvian.
Before I vote, I also, I will support the hold as well, but I just wanted to share a little bit of data that I received today that Fort Meade expects an additional 10,000 employees by the end of this year, and the East Campus alone will bring an additional 12,000 jobs in the next few years. So I really do feel like time is of the essence, but at the same time, I heard from a number of constituents only today who had concerns about this bill. And I know it's, you know, we've had, the schools have had spring break, we've had Passover, Ramadan, and Easter all converging in a very short time frame. So I feel like it's fair to hold the bill for 2 weeks to have a little more discussion. And so I vote aye.
And just to clarify, this was a motion to hold the vote on Bill number 3122 until May 2nd?
Yes.
Okay. So the motion to hold the vote on Bill number 3122 until May the 2nd, 2022 has been adopted.
Thank you. All right. The bill number 31-22 will be voted on May 2nd. Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill number 32-22.
Bill number 3222, an ordinance concerning finance, taxation, and budget, admissions, and amusement tax, tax holiday.
All right. This, Ms. Hare, this is your bill. You may have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jessica Hare, District 7. I think the bill is largely self-explanatory. We've seen inflation currently higher than it's been really in 4 decades at this point. And, you know, looking at ways that we can offer some you know, grace essentially to residents in the communities with some of the cost of living. really is a high priority for me. Started looking at sort of where are there individual areas that we can actually give some money back to the residents. And one of this is this amusement tax that exists in the county, or sort of a fun tax, right? If you go bowling, if you go to the movies, if you rent the bowling shoes, if you rent a bounce house for a birthday party, or any of those things, there's this 10% tax essentially that's on top of it. And so trying to figure out kind of how we might be able to help alleviate some of this inflation, giving a holiday, much like they do with clothing right before back to school, seemed like, hey, maybe we can figure out a way to pass on some savings to the consumer. I would love to get rid of the tax entirely. This bill in particular goes a step farther and even says, hey, look, not only are we going to give a holiday on this tax, but we're only going to grant it to those businesses who certify under penalties of perjury that they are passing the savings along to the consumer. So this is really targeted towards giving folks a break when they go to the movies with their family. It's for a month only, much like they just did with the gas tax. So we're talking about, it's August, summer break. If you want to take your kids to the movies, or you want to take them bowling, or roller skating, or anything fun like that, this is kind of one small way that we can say, hey, we understand the cost of living right now is really high, and we would like to cut you some slack on this. So with that, I ask for your support.
Thank you. Mr. Barron.
Thank you. Pete Barron with the administration. I have Karen McQuaid from Finance here. Hooja from Budget, because Mr. Trumbauer is running the Boston Marathon today. And Ms. Blair Klausmeyer sticking with me at the end of the table. So appreciate the intent of the sponsor. We've had some tough times recently with COVID, and the idea of giving folks a break is a good one. We do have some serious concerns about how this will work, how this may or may not trickle down to consumers, and we have some practical concerns just on how we would have to administer this because of some of the complexity of how the amusement tax works and how it's collected. Karen can speak to some of the practical concerns there, but I just want to remind this body that at the end of the day, you're the final fiscal authority. You'll be brought a budget very soon, and if you forgo revenue that is often paid for by out-of-county residents, we will either have to cut teachers, police, firefighters, or other government services, or replace that revenue some other way. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. McQuaid to make a few comments, and then Hooja's here for all the tough number questions.
Okay. Good evening, Karen McQuaid, Office of Finance. I'm just going to go over some general points on the admissions and amusements tax, because it can be a little bit confusing. First of all, the Comptroller of Maryland administers the laws that relate to the admissions and amusement tax, so it's actually handled by the state. The county tax on admission and amusement charges is collected by the Comptroller of Maryland and distributed to the county on a quarterly basis. Currently, we receive the revenue collection quarterly reports on a quarterly basis. Per Tax General Article 4-105, except as otherwise prohibited in this section, the admission and amusement tax rate is, number one, the rate that the county or municipal corporation sets, not exceeding 10% of gross receipts subject to the admissions and amusement tax. So the county is currently 10% of gross receipts, with the exception of movie theaters, which is 7.5%. And then we have some exemptions that are found in Section 4101D of the county code that you can look at. Per the Tax General Article 4-201, a person shall complete under oath and file with the Comptroller of the admissions and amusements tax return on or before the 10th of the month following the month in which the person has gross receipts subject to this. Admissions and amusements tax revenue received by the county for the first quarter, which is actually June, July, and August, because they report a month later, of fiscal years 2021 and 22 totaled approximately $1.8 million, $1.2 million, and $2.3 million respectively. It's important to note that the first quarter of 2021 was during the pandemic, so that's really not a fair comparison. The August 21 admissions and amusements revenue was approximately $785,000, and I had to request a monthly report from the state since they only give us quarterly, but I was able to get that information. For the Tax General Article 4-105 of the state code, if a county or municipal corporation or stadium authority charges an admission or amusements tax rate or changes the class to which the rate applies, the county, municipal corporation, or stadium authority shall give the comptroller notice of the change at least 60 days before the effective date of the change. This is so they can notify all the businesses that are affected by this. If the businesses choose to participate in the tax holiday, they may need to make changes to their business processes, software, equipment, so that could be an issue for some of the businesses. The Office of Finance will develop a certification document for the businesses to complete. If the state won't mail those, which I discussed with them to see if they would be willing to mail them for us when they mail out the changes, then we would need to get a list from the state because they have a complete list of all the businesses because they register with the state, not with the county. And then we would send out the forms for them so that they would have the certification documents. Let's see. And we would have the forms available on our website, but they always go to the state for anything, so but we would have that available for them. We would need to request the following information for the state to ensure compliance with the certification requirements. They'd have to give us a monthly report, and they'd also have to give me the actual returns for each of the businesses so that I can make sure that they are complying with the rules of the bill. And once again, they file it the month following. So I hope this is helpful, understanding the admissions and amusements tax. It's a little bit of confusing tax.
And if I may, Madam Chair, just to
Go ahead.
add one other practical concern as it relates to our bingo establishments in the county. There's a provision in state code, and I'm sorry, I thought I had it written down in my notes, but I must not have. I can get it for you, where if the county doesn't charge the tax, the state just applies. I think it's, Hoosier might know it off the top of his head. It's like 30%, and then, yeah.
Yes.
Kisley.
State, Hooja from Budget Office. State tax on bingo is set to either 30% or 35% combined. So currently, state charges 25%, and then county charges 10%. If you eliminate 10%, states goes up to 30%. So basically, the citizens only get benefit of 5%, not full amount. That's written by state code. And another thing I want to mention is in here, about 30% of the admission and amusement tax revenue comes from bingo, and then another 25%-ish comes from motion pictures, and maybe other 10% shows and exhibits, which is one of the big example of shows and exhibits is Medieval Times in Arundel Mill. And most of the attendees, I think, when this is like 10 years ago, there's some research, like Fred Lichteg, Budget Office, and they found out that most of this revenue from especially Medieval Times comes from out of county, not the Anne Arundel County, because only Medieval Times in Anne Arundel County, not Howard County, not others too. So that's one concern, that probably Anne Arundel County residents will not get full benefit of this tax cut. I just want to mention that.
Thank you. Ms. Hare.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jessica Hare, District 7. First, I neglected to say thank you to Ms. McQuaid and Ms. Klausmeyer for helping me with this bill as we went through the process and getting all this information on how the tax is collected and the gross receipts versus, you know, the differences between sales tax and how that's collected and things like that. So I very much appreciate all your time on that. I I acknowledge that there are some interesting quirks about how notice would have to be mailed out and things like that. I still think it's worth doing it. Businesses can choose to participate, you know, and it's still, whether it's full benefit, partial benefit, there are definitely still Anne Arundel County residents who will benefit from this bill, and I absolutely think it's worth doing. So with that, I ask for your support.
All right, seeing no additional lights at this time, we will now open the public hearing on Bill number 32-22. Madam Secretary, do we have any testimony received from members of the public?
No, Madam Chair, we did not receive anything ahead of time.
Thank you. We will now invite members of the audience who signed up before the meeting to address the council on Bill number 32-22. Remarks will be limited to 2 minutes. We did not have anyone sign up in advance on this bill, but if there's anyone who would like to testify, you may come down to the table and share your thoughts now. Seeing no movement in the audience, the public hearing on Bill number 32-22 is now closed. Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill number 32-22.
Bill number 3222, an ordinance concerning finance, taxation, and budget, admissions, and amusement tax holiday.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, we do have one amendment tonight, as you know. Please read amendment number 1.
Amendment number 1. This amendment rewrites Bill number 3222 to remove the tax holiday and instead repeal the county's admissions and amusement tax altogether.
Thank you. All right. Mr. Volke, this is your amendment. You may have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I looked at this bill when it came out and thought to myself, if we're going to get rid of this tax for a short period of time, why not get rid of it entirely? Because I think that's something that I campaigned on, was tax relief for the citizens of Anne Arundel County. I know others up here did too. So with that, this would take the bill a step further, and this would institute a permanent repeal of the amusement tax. So I'd ask for my colleagues' support. Oh, and I move the amendment.
Is there a second?
Fiedler, second.
All right. Mr. Barron, you have the floor if the administration would like to respond.
Sure. I think there are some concerns with the bill as drafted, but at least the bill as drafted had a provision to make sure savings were passed on to the consumer. I think we probably just see the world differently. I will point, we do have some evidence here. The county tried this before. There was a movie theater, removal of the movie theater from the amusement tax, and no ticket prices were lowered. I don't believe that if the council passes this amendment that consumers will see a benefit, the corporations will, and the county will take an $8 million annual fiscal hit, and you'll need in the upcoming budget to decide who we lay off. Reject the amendment.
Any additional, Mr. Volke?
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, I just was looking over the COVID funds report and the money that the county has spent on a variety of different things. And I tabulated just a few of them up, and it was like $16 million between bonuses for county employees, buying homeless properties for homeless housing, and there was, rec and parks vehicles, additional maintenance and vehicle purchases for rec and parks. And so I just think it's interesting when we sort of look at the priorities of where we're going to spend money, because it seems the county doesn't have any problem spending $8 million sort of on things that they think are important, but on tax relief for the citizens, it's one of these things where all of a sudden the sky is falling. What I would note about this is, and I've had this discussion with some of my colleagues, in the event that we do repeal this tax and it goes away, I understand your point where you think that this will not be passed on to the consumers, that it'll simply be something that's pocketed by the businesses. But what I expect, and maybe this is where you and I see the world differently, is that some smart business is going to realize that they can shave 10% off their costs, thereby getting a competitive advantage. And then the other businesses are going to say, uh-oh, you know, they're over here undercutting us. Now all of a sudden that's going to change the way the market works. So that's the way I see the world. I can understand that maybe we don't see it the same way, but I do think that some smart business person is going to realize this is 10% that they can shave, which will get them more customers. So with that, I do think it'll get passed on to the consumers, and I disagree, but I think you and I just see it differently.
Well, I will add the county spent COVID relief dollars to also provide relief to businesses who are impacted by the pandemic, in addition to immediate health needs, test kits, what have you, PPE, all sorts of spending on that front that benefited the county and the businesses. I will also say the difference in federal money is it's one-time dollars. The amusement tax is recurring, and I can feel Husha nodding his head in agreement with me, which makes me feel really good.
Ms. Pickard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think we know from economists from the last 30, 40 years, trickle-down economics don't work. They never have. $8 million tax hit is going to affect our bottom line and how we are able to support services in this county and our employees. The county is not only a provider of services and upkeep of roads and everything else, we're also an employer. So Ms. Hare's bill as written, with just 1 month out of the year, $785,000, doesn't sound like a lot as far as a hit to the county. It also doesn't sound like a lot to my pocketbook when there's 600,000 people in this county. I might get $1 off the movies one time in August. It really doesn't sound like it's worth the processing and administration that's going to take place to get us that little bit of savings. I think we have a budget coming up, and that will be announced next week. I think we're going to be able to have a much more robust conversation about the fiscal status of the county and how we're going to be able to alleviate some tax burden in a more meaningful, impactful way. I think this is a gimmick. I think this is a Facebook post, and I reject the bill and the amendment.
Ms. Hare.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jessica Hare, District 7. It's unfortunate to hear somebody call something that you've worked hard on a gimmick, but I appreciate that feedback. Look, I think tax relief, no matter what we do, whether it's a small first step or a larger cut, is always worth exploring, and it's always worth exploring how we can help individuals. I think $1 off at the movies and 50 cents off at the bowling alley, I think it does add up, and I think it might make the difference to some folks. I don't think people necessarily appreciate being told that the $1 or the 50 cents is not important. I support this amendment because I think getting rid of the tax will also impact individuals, although, as I said, I did draft the original bill to ensure that the savings was passed on to the consumer. So I'm going to support the amendment. I'd love to have support on the amended bill to get rid of it entirely. I'd really love to have support on the bill as drafted to give some relief to folks, particularly in the summertime. Everybody's trying to get back out and do things. And I think it's important that we help them.
Ms. Fiedler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Amanda Fiedler, District 5. I just want to say that I disagree with the idea that $8 million in savings to the taxpayer is going to result in cutting teachers, fire, police officers, all of the positions that were listed. If the folks in the room remember, in 2019 when we worked on our first budget as a council, Mr. Volke, Ms. Hare, and I supported multiple amendments that cut $20 million from the budget by going through the budget with a fine-tooth comb, and none of those proposed cuts cut a teacher, firefighter, or police officer. So I just reject that. This would immediately mean that those positions would have to be reduced. Thank you.
All right, seeing no additional lights, Madam Secretary, please call the roll on amendment number 1.
Mr. Pruski.
Nay.
Ms. Fiedler.
Aye.
Ms. Hare.
Aye.
Ms. Lacy?
Nay.
Ms. Pickard?
Nay.
Mr. Volkey?
Aye.
Ms. Rodvian?
Nay.
3 in the affirmative, 4 in the negative. Amendment number 1 has been defeated.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on Bill number 32-22?
Madam Chair?
Yes, Ms. Lacy.
Sorry, this thought is just occurring to me now, but I think it would be wise to consider the bill during the budget process. We don't have in front of us the full information that we would be able to have then. And, you know, I'm, like a lot of people, I do need to add up my dollars and cents, especially since I had so many children. It costs a whole lot of money to take them around to any kind of place that they might want to go, right? When that does happen. So I know a lot of people are in that same boat, and I just feel like I can't fully and fairly consider this bill right now. I might perhaps suggest, you know, limiting it to like just this August, because I don't know what next August is, and only considering it during the fiscal year, you know, that we're specifically talking about. So I guess with that, I would move to hold the vote on this bill until, I suppose, our second meeting in May, because we'll have to have the first meeting, and I don't think we'll have that information till later, unless somebody suggests something more reasonable.
Ms. Hare.
Point of information, I think the problem, we looked at the timing of it because of the requirement for notice by the state. There's a 60-day notice requirement, so pushing the bill out that far would mean that the August timeframe is not attainable. I had looked at August specifically because kids are out of school and parents might be more likely to take families to do outings like that than they would necessarily in the school year. I'd be happy to consider a separate new bill for a different time period, but I don't think this one could be pushed to the end of May and still have an August date. I did make it only 2 years, an uncodified bill, because I thought, let's see how it goes for the first year and the second year, whether folks participate, whether folks see a meaningful difference, before we looked at all at making it a more permanent fixture. So that's that timing. So I can't support a hold because of that. It just kind of defeats the purpose, but I appreciate that consideration.
Likewise. Thank you.
I'm seeing no additional lights, but I'm thinking of my own comments and my own thoughts here. I mean, I certainly appreciate the idea of trying to provide some relief to, you know, residents of the county, but at the same time, I'm, you know, without knowing exactly what this will cost the county, and, you know, without having, I know we're only a few weeks away. We're not even like, what, 10 days, 11 days of away from having the budget. I feel like we'll be so much better informed, even 11 days from now, to have an idea of what kind of things would be trading for. You know, I think we're kind of ballparking it at 8 million. Actually, where did we come up with that? I think it was, we had 1 month that was estimated at about 800,000, and so 800,000 times 12 is 9.6 million, but then that's, we got some rounding issues in there. So anyway, we'll just say 8 million.
Yeah, roughly $8 million.
Okay, so we do have a confirmed 8 million cycling, you know, times of the year. Amusements are more popular than others. But yeah, even in 11 days from now, I think we'd have a better idea of what we would be trading for this. And I think there's, you know, very important conversations to be had on those exact topics. What do we have to give up to provide this relief? Are we giving up something that is also extremely important to residents? So that's kind of where I'm at. And Ms. Hare, you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jessica Hare, District 7. I just want to clarify, the $8 million that was referenced was for an entire year for all amusements. This bill applies to only 1 month of the entire year. So only 1 month this holiday would be in place for August only. So we're talking, the auditor's blue letter mentioned, I think, $785,000 for the entire fiscal impact. And that's it, $785,000. To be clear, I mean, last year when I think there was a a budget miss because DPW didn't include an estimate that they had forgotten for Beverly Triton. I mean, that miss was more than this, right? That miss was over $1 million. So we're, in the grand scheme of our budget, you know, we run under on the CAO contingency every year by millions of dollars. I'm confident the $785,000 is easily found in other places in the budget where, you know, 11 days from now, we can work with this.
To clarify, so it's only August 2022, not August 2023?
August of 2022 and August of 2023.
Okay,
That's
so
it.
1 point, well, they'd be different fiscal
Different
years.
fiscal years,
Okay.
correct.
All right, that does soften it a little bit. I'm still, I'm torn. All right.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was trying to think of maybe another way that, with the 60 days, I wasn't aware that there was this 60-day requirement. And if, you know, how does that impact, I guess, is there any kind of like alternate structure you had thought about, or maybe only doing, say, 2 weeks? Because if you just did the second half of August, could we do something like that? And that way we'd be able to still hold the bill and figure out the impact a little bit better? Or can you only do it by a month? I mean,
Well, you have to give notice to the state. I'm not
Right.
quite sure how they do that, but
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Is it like you have to give notice 60 days in advance for a whole month period that you want to change it, or can you do a portion
well, they
of a
report
month?
on a monthly basis. So the return would be for the month. I guess the businesses could do that, but they only give a return for a month. So they would like do 2 weeks and not 2 weeks, I guess, is how they would do it.
And if I can just jump in for 1 second, one of the issues that we considered, I think Ms. McQuaid mentioned this, is the administrative burden to the vendor. You know, are they going to change their processes for 2 weeks worth of, you know, tax holiday? That was kind of the thought process, was at least a month might be worth it to them. We're still not sure how many would take advantage of it, but.
Right, okay. It's a tough one. Okay, thanks.
All right, seeing no additional lights, Madam Secretary, please call the roll on bill number 32-22.
Yes, Madam Chair. Before we do that, I just want to state for the record, there was a motion to hold the vote on the bill until May 16th that was made by Ms. Lacy, but there was not a second.
There was no second.
So that motion did not go anywhere, just for the record. And now I'll call the roll on the bill. Mr. Pruski.
Nay.
Ms. Fiedler.
Aye.
Ms. Hare.
Aye.
Ms. Lacy.
This is the most unfun vote. Nay.
Ms. Pickard.
Nay.
Mr. Volkey.
Aye.
Ms. Rodvian.
Now I have to be the ultimate party pooper if I vote nay of the, nay.
3 in the affirmative, 4 in the negative. Bill number 32-22 has been defeated.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. At this time, we are moving on to resolution number 6-22. Madam Secretary, please read the title of that resolution.
Resolution number 622, resolution approving the terms and conditions of the acquisition of real properties in Severn, Maryland from Ribeiro Development LLC utilizing funds from the Advanced Land Acquisition Capital Project.
This resolution comes from the administration. Mr. Barron, you have the floor.
Thank you. Pete Barron with the administration. Joining me from Rec and Parks is Ms. Matthews. From our Board of Education, Mr. Shagnovich, Mr. Burke from DPW, and waiting all the way to the last bill, Ms. Niederer from the Office of Law to step in. So this is a really exciting resolution. This has been a lot of work to get here. Resolution 622 approves the purchase of 2 parcels in Severn, Maryland for $2,979,000 $100,000 from the Advanced Land Acquisition Capital Project. The property totals 30.5 acres, is connected to Severn Danza Park. The Department of Rec and Parks worked in collaboration with the Board of Education to develop a feasibility study outlining potential recreational and education uses of the space, including the use of a park, and then maybe down the road, the use for a school. The staff is here ready to answer any questions, but we encourage you to pass this bill now so we can settle on the land and get to building a park. Thank you.
Ms. Pickard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to be added as a co-sponsor. I didn't realize I hadn't done that, if that's possible. But two, this is extremely exciting for the Severn, Danza, District 2, and beyond community. There is not a regional park north of Kinder Farm Park in Anne Arundel County. And this parcel gets us a little bit closer to something that could be for the near and medium, maybe long-term future, a regional park. Adding to Severn Danza, I've spent countless meetings with the Severn Athletic Club, youth athletics that utilize Severn Danza. They are competing amongst themselves for field space, baseball, softball, soccer, lacrosse. We've worked hard with the LDC to enhance that park, but these parcels are extremely vital to growing recreation in the northwest part of the county. I can't tell you how exciting this is. Not only are we able to expand a park with both active and hopefully passive recreation, but we're also able to probably preserve some of that land from residential development. But this is a culmination of a good 3.5 years of work to assemble the parcels in order for the county to be in this position to make this purchase. So I urge my colleagues to pass this unanimously tonight on behalf of youth athletics and park goers in the northwest part of the county. Thank you.
Mr. Pruski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think something is important. We've talked about the growth of Fort Meade and the control we have and the control we don't have. But the one thing, and I've said this, and this relates to Mr. Volke and Tanyard Springs, this relates to Piney Orchard and some of the other areas, anytime we can purchase a future school site, it's a win for Anne Arundel County. And I will say this again, whoever continues in my seat and along with the council and county executive will need to continue these efforts because of what's happening at Fort Meade and surrounding pieces. So I want to commend the county, all parties that got to this point, but this shouldn't be the only property that we should be purchasing. We should continue in the next 3 to 4 years as our county continues to grow to find these sites, because I can tell you there's not a lot of them left. So in my opinion, we need to make sure we continue to make these efforts, and this is just one example, but I think we need to do more, and thank you to Parks and Recs for partnering too with the Board of Ed. That's the kind of government that people want to see, that we're actually looking and thinking ahead. Thank you.
I'm just going to chime in. You basically said everything, and I know it's much more impactful to your district than mine, but if we're really looking at 10,000 additional new jobs, that doesn't even count families and family members by the end of this year, and another 12,000 in the next 2 or 3 following that. We really better be scooping up every single parcel we can get for parks and educational purposes. So thank you for the work, and keep it coming. That's my cheer for this resolution. And seeing no additional lights, we will now open the public hearing on resolution number 6-22. Madam Secretary, do we have any testimony received from members of the public?
No, Madam Chair, we did not receive anything ahead of time.
Thank you. We will now invite members of the audience who signed up before the meeting to address the council on resolution number 6-22. Remarks will be limited to 2 minutes. We did not have anyone sign up in advance, but if there is anyone in the room who would like to speak, come on down. All right, seeing no one Moving in the audience, the public hearing on resolution number 6-22 is now closed. Madam Secretary, please read the title of resolution number 6-22.
Resolution number 622, resolution approving the terms and conditions of the acquisition of real properties in Severn, Maryland from Ribera Development LLC, utilizing funds from the Advanced Land Acquisition Capital Project.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, Madam Secretary, please call the roll on resolution number 6-22.
Mr. Pruski.
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler.
Aye.
Ms. Hare.
Aye.
Ms. Lacy.
Aye.
Ms. Pickard.
Aye.
Mr. Volkey.
Aye.
Ms. Rodvian.
Aye.
7 in the affirmative, none in the negative. Resolution number 622 has been adopted.
And thank you to the panel members. I know a lot of you were here from the beginning and waited a long time to have us smile and nod at you, so thank you for your time. Is there any other business to be brought before the council this evening? May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
A second? Very good. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. The county council is adjourned until April 29th, when we will come together for the county executive's budget address to the county council. See you then, 11 a.m.